It was another day, and Aisha Rose woke up the same way she had been for the past few weeks now, face to face with a sleeping Aubrey Saint. The young girl was completely naked and snoring lightly, and it didn't seem like she was going to wake up any time soon. Seriously, how did I get so lucky? She wondered. After being blessed, Aisha had a lot of eyes on her and was showered with attention. Being blessed by not one but two of the most famous Greek gods tended to have that effect. For a while, she reveled in it as any normal person would. She had numerous relationships with all kinds of women, but none of them were ever able to make her forget about the girl she truly had her eyes on. Aisha had always hoped that her fame would bring Aubrey to her as well, but when the young girl was hit by one tragedy after another, relationships became the absolute last thing on her mind. But once Malachi became blessed, the two began to spend more time together and Aisha's crush became less and less one-sided. Because Aisha was not a man, Aubrey was comfortable enough to be herself around her and open up. That was something she had not been able to do with anyone, not even Malachi, for a very long time. Aisha finally slipped out of bed quietly after spending 5 whole minutes ogling her girlfriend like some kind of stalker. After stretching her beautiful and well-defined body, she tiptoed into the bathroom where she immediately turned the shower on the hottest setting. While showering, Aisha fully cleared her mind of anything unnecessary. For the first time in a long time, she was quite excited for today. She and her best friend would be entering a gate together, and it meant an immense amount to the both of them. Neither of them were very good at expressing their feelings to one another, but both of them knew how much this day meant to them. Who doesn't want to fight side by side with their best friend? Aisha got out of the shower and put on some light sweats before grabbing her duffel bag with all of her equipment inside. She placed a small kiss on Aubrey's cheek before exiting her bedroom, already knowing she would see her at the gate site later. Softly closing the door, Aisha walked casually towards her garage and listened to the sound of her feet tapping against her white marble floors. Entering her garage, she put on a thoughtful expression as she mulled over which of her 24 supercars she should drive today. I've been driving the Taguni a lot lately, should take the Veyron for a change of pace? Just as she thought she'd made a decision, she caught sight of a small white card on the windshield of her Lamborghini. 2043. Picking it up, her face became nothing short of frightening as she read the words and symbols of her Lamborghini. Picking it up, her face became nothing short of frightening as she read the words and symbols inscribed on the back. The symbol was that of a man on top of a mountain, and below him were what appeared to be worshippers. Inscribed in bright red letters were the words, "You are superior." Unconsciously, Aisha released a bit of her pressure and cracked the windows of a few of her cars, but right now she couldn't have cared less. Those fuckers, how dare they? I thought this before, but aren't you in a shit mood today? Currently Malachi, Bianca, Aisha, and Luna were all sitting in the back of a limousine, riding towards the side of the gate. The ride was almost over, and yet Aisha had yet to say a single word. While it was true that she wasn't very talkative to begin with, one would not have expected her to be like this on today of all days. Even though Malachi posed his question as a light-hearted joke, his eyes showed that he was actually quite concerned. Aisha was able to notice that small detail, and her expression softened as she stared out the window. Sorry, just a bit worried. I'll spend an unnecessary amount of time trying to save your ass today. I'll do my best to spare you the trouble, little beast. Aisha glanced at Malachi out of the corner of her eye and analyzed his new equipment. He looked every bit like a capable soldier, and she was particularly jealous over the half-mask sitting in his lap that had a clenched teeth design. She couldn't help but think about her favorite anime character of all time, and her need to possess such a treasure skyrocketed. Turning to Bianca, she immediately pulled out her phone and opened up a money transfer app. Hey new girl, make me one of those too. I'll pay you whatever you want. Yeah. Wait, huh? Bianca was so preoccupied staring at Mal and his new gear that she'd barely registered what Aisha had said. The War Princess of Immortal Moon simply pointed to the mask in Malachi's lap, and Bianca was immediately able to get the gist of what was being asked of her. Oh, sure, I can make you one. For the design, do you want something like Dash? Exactly like that. For real? Yes. Copycat. Mal muttered. Would you prefer I just kill you and take yours? Malachi chuckled and threw his hands up in surrender just as they arrived at their destination. Are all of you ready? Luna asked. As always, she received only confident nods and smiles from each of her guild members, and in turn she was filled with reassurance that things would go well. But in the back of her mind, she was a bit worried that something unexpected might occur like the last time Mal entered a dungeon. Stepping out of the car, the four of them were immediately showered with cheers, applause, and a barrage of photos. For the first time, Malachi was largely unnoticed, as everyone's attention was on the two beauties that would be entering alongside him. Aisha wore a simple outfit of black cargo pants paired with heavy-duty boots and a military-style flak jacket that stopped just below her breasts and exposed the dragon tattoo running down her back. Bianca's outfit had a much sleeker look, with simple pants paired with a long-sleeved top that exposed her muscular abdomen as well as highlighted her curvaceous figure. I'm in love. I would gladly run into a gate if it meant I could get a whiff of their hair. How can they be so gorgeous? The girls seemed to be uncaring or immune to the comments and desires of the crowd, as they continued to make their way towards the gate without sparing them so much as a glance. At the front of the crowd, sitting just outside the gate, were faces that Mal and Aisha knew all too well. Say, Surana, Anna, and Aubrey were all there wearing proud smiles and saying silent prayers for the well-being of their loved ones. The blessed had no time to stop and speak, but Malachi still managed to flash his girlfriend a flirtatious wink as he slipped on his mask. Say's face began to get hot, and she was already looking forward to their intimate alone time later tonight. At her side, Surana was making a face like she was going to be sick at any moment. Once the trio met their assigned cameraman, they did not waste another moment and immediately entered the swirling blue portal. Malachi was the first to pass through, and once he got a good look at his surroundings, he knew exactly what kind of monsters he would be facing and his heart dropped all the way to his boots. Oh gods no. Anything but this. Malachi appeared within a dimly lit cave that smelled nothing short of deplorable. There were small hastily made torches embedded into the walls, and all around him were pieces of shredded clothing and trinkets. He immediately recognized these types of surroundings, and he was suddenly filled with a desire to turn around and go home. A moment later, both Bianca and Aisha passed through as well, and they quickly covered their noses from the rancid smell. Hobgoblins. I would have picked a more conservative outfit if I'd known that they were in the dungeon. Ditto. Bianca muttered as she looked at her massive chest and exposed belly. Just like regular goblins, hobgoblins were effectively sex on legs as all of their thoughts seemed to be focused on screwing until they were soggy. The only difference was that hobgoblins were much closer to adult size and could put up a better fight while also utilizing the poison and trickery they mastered while they were young. Suddenly, Aisha recalled that her friend had a particular apprehension to these creatures after accidentally coming across some of their handiwork on the dark side of the internet. Poor Mal had been traumatized ever since. Even his favorite manga about a guy being reincarnated as a goblin had been completely off limits. You good? Aisha asked with a mocking smile. Just before Mal could respond, the sound of several footsteps echoed off the walls of the cavern, and several monsters appeared carrying torches and rusty weapons. There were around 20 of them, and they all had mottled green skin and crazed red eyes burning with wickedness and lust. Their massive mouths hung open to reveal cracked and broken teeth of every shape and size, and long purple tongues that licked their lips in anticipation. Among this group of 20, around half were females who were looking at Mal like he was a slab of meat. Maraka. The lead hobgoblin ordered the rest to rush forward, and its underlings immediately moved to claim their prizes. However, they did not get very far. As soon as the goblins started moving towards the humans, 10 gleaming silver knives were flung from Malachi's hands. The daggers seemingly took on a life of their own as they cut through the air at an inhuman speed and sliced up the bodies of the goblins like they were made of butter. Disbelieving screams filled the air as the bodies of the hobgoblins were pierced all over, reducing their figures into piles of mincemeat in no more than a few seconds. And yet, Malachi still proved to be unsatisfied as he sent forth a wave of bright golden flames from his hand and incinerated their remains. Only when Malachi was staring at several piles of ash and glimmering dungeon drops did he finally feel a sense of relief wash over his body. But when he remembered that the dungeon would likely have more of these horrifying creatures, his body stiffened and his mood became serious once again. This place must be cleansed from top to bottom. He muttered dramatically. Ha ha ha. I know you're traumatized and all that, but save some work for your teammates, yeah? Aisha said as she kneeled to examine the loot. Unsurprisingly, such low-level monsters did not yield anything better than the items that the three already had, so the items were put away for now and the group continued moving. Don't you think that was a bit overkill, handsome? Bianca asked as they walked through the stone tunnels. Mal shook his head no, as he kept his eye out for more of those foul creatures. You just don't know, B. Something like that was the bare minimum. Ignore him. Aisha said as she rolled her eyes. He's just like this, because he doesn't know when to stop pressing next video on YouTube. I'm just saying there is no way I should have been able to go from RDC, all the way to extreme gore. There's a problem with the algorithm. You're just too curious for your own good. Bianca looked back and forth between the two best friends and let out a charming laugh. You guys are really close, huh? He knows too much about me. He's stuck with me for life. Aisha said seriously. Same. Malachi agreed. The two shared an instinctual fist bump without exchanging another word, both already knowing that they were fated to follow each other in both life and death. The viewers watching on stream unleashed a flood of comments applauding their unusual yet rock-solid friendship. As the group continued their exploration, they realized that the deeper they explored, the more the underground tunnels opened up. It wasn't long before the four of them were standing in a wide-open cavern with a glowing blue stones lining the surface of the ceiling. At first, none of them believed what they were seeing, but after blinking for several minutes, they had no choice but to accept the reality. Are those really all mana stones? It would seem like it. This is insane. In today's time, mana stones were more valuable than diamonds and gold. Different from mana ore, which are used for construction, mana stones have much greater applications for use. Despite their use appearing as no more than cosmetic, just one of these fist-sized stones is enough to power a small building for 2 years, and it is theorized that a football-sized purple one would be enough to power an entire state for 10. Needless to say, these stones are very rare and simply acquiring 2 in the same dungeon is seen as a gift from the gods. And now the 3 members of Immortal Moon were staring at thousands of them. Looks like I'm getting a raise. Bianca said excitedly. Aisha and Malachi nodded along in stunned agreement, neither of them able to take their eyes off the glowing ceiling overhead. Mentally, they were already imagining the absurd amount of money that would hit their accounts later, and they could not have been more ecstatic. Suddenly, the heavy sound of footsteps echoed from the cavern around them, and the group were reminded that they had only just entered this dungeon, and there was much more work to be done. The group were expecting more hobgoblins, but instead of the ravenous monsters they were anticipating, they were greeted by a herd of orcs that numbered well into the 50s. Humans! Keep them away from the treasured and take the women alive. The lead orc ordered. The eyes of the blessed nearly popped out of their skulls. While wasn't uncommon for monsters to talk, they did not speak in a dialect that humans could comprehend. So for one to suddenly begin speaking English. It was strange beyond belief. Did he just? No time to worry about that, they're coming. The orcs did not hesitate to charge at the intruders, and Bianca and Aisha responded accordingly. While Bianca pulled out twin bronze gauntlets, Aisha reached inside of her storage ring and pulled out a black and gold naginata that was aglow with a purple light. Malachi stepped in between the two of them, looking quite different from his usual self. His already tall frame had gone up another foot in height, making him 7 feet 5 inches. Powerful muscles had bloomed all across his body, and his skin was now covered with a thin layer of dark black fur. His long dreads had shrunk considerably and now resembled a proud mane of dark black hair. The claws on his fingers were so long they resembled his knives, and seemed as though they were capable of cutting through even the thickest of metals with a single slice. He removed his mask and clipped it onto his belt, revealing his face that was no longer human but instead a monstrous lion's. Leave at least one of them alive. We need to know what they can tell us. Right. Even though Aisha was a dual blessed, she was not always widely respected and famous. In a world where men could summon armies of undead and cause earthquakes with a snap of their fingers, having drastic charming abilities wasn't very much to write home about. So as a result, Aisha wasn't very happy with her blessing from Aphrodite. But her blessing from the most famous god of war was an entirely different story. It enabled her to have a master-level understanding of any weapon just by touching it, but that was not what made her such a force to be reckoned with. Within Gates, there are a rare class of weapons that can grant their wielders additional abilities, like low-level fire manipulation, enhanced speed, and some even housed spirits. If you aren't lucky enough to find one of these treasures inside of a gate, there are private auctions held only for the blessed where these rare trinkets are sold. Once Aisha found her first spirit weapon, both her natural talent and value exploded, and she became one of the most feared and women alive. The rate at which she cleared Gates was nothing short of staggering, and her monetary value skyrocketed to reflect her accomplishments. As a result, she was able to buy more ability weapons, and increase her talent and lethality to rarely seen heights. The total number of weapons in her collection now numbered well over 70, each with their own unique ability. But even after all of this time, Aisha still preferred the first ability weapon that she had ever gotten her hands on. A black and gold Naginata named Kaizen, imbued with the spirit of a powerful warrior from some ancient dynasty. Aisha's weapon began to glow with an eerie purple light, and a wisp of energy left her blade and floated at her side. Bit by bit, the mist transformed into a man wearing ancient rusty armor and an Oni mask covering his face. The man was holding the same kind of weapon as Aisha, only his seemed to be in an incorporeal state, just like the rest of his body. "Let's go." "Yes, my lady." Aisha fearlessly rushed forward into the horde of approaching orcs. Her speed was as impressive as it was devastating, and she cut through the enemies with equal parts grace and mastery. She and her weapon spirit worked in tandem as they moved their way through the horde of green-skinned monsters. If Aisha cut off a limb, then Kaizen would pierce its head and ensure its death. In the midst of battle, Aisha glanced to her left, and the scene playing in front of her made her smile unconsciously. Malachi was a few feet away, ripping apart these very muscular orcs with his bare hands. His claws were never idle as he tore through these monsters without suffering so much as a scratch himself, and the young girl was overflowing with a sense of pride. The two of them had been thick as thieves ever since they were able to draw breath on this earth, and there wasn't a lot that the two of them hadn't done together. But after Aisha became a blessed, it was like there was this invisible wall in her life that was keeping the two of them separated. They both wanted nothing more than to tear down that wall so that they could continue walking side by side. But how could they hope to do that? It wasn't like she could bless him, nor did they have a direct hotline to the gods so that they might ask them personally. Malachi getting powers was an insane stroke of luck and a blessing for their friendship, as well as a way to ensure that the two of them would never be separated again. As Aisha looked at her best friend's monstrous figure, she couldn't suppress the overwhelming sentiment she felt from watching this scene. "You'll always be my best friend, Mel. No matter." "The fuck? Why are you eating these things?" "My lady, please pay attention." "Alright. Sorry, Kaizen." The group was able to dispatch the orcs rather easily, and it wasn't very long before there was only one left, and he was currently being held down by Bianca. "Get off of me, human. You soil my honor with your touch. You kinda smell like you soiled yourself a while ago, though." Bianca was trying her hardest not to gag as she breathed in the orc's body odor. The urge to puke was currently only being suppressed by the knowledge that Malachi was here. How embarrassing would it be if she vomited in front of her crush? Throwing up is not sexy, throwing up is not sexy. She screamed internally. Malachi and Aisha dropped to one knee in front of the struggling orc, and took a moment to marvel at the absurdity of their capture. "What should we ask at first?" Aisha asked. Malachi needed only a moment to think about an answer, as there was really one that was of the utmost importance. "Are monsters like you responsible for opening the gates?" "Fool. Why would we possess the power to open portals to the beyonds? Then who's opening them? And what motivates you to walk through?" "Not who, human." "What?" Tomato, motherfucker, just answer the question." Malachi was beginning to get irritated, as Bianca wasn't lying about the smell. And since his senses were leagues ahead of the average blessed, he felt like his nostrils were filled with excrement and gooch grease. "Bastard human. Do you not know that we are lured at the whim of?" Suddenly, the words of the orc began to trail off and his eyes became glossy and unfocused. Bianca noticed that her captive had finally stopped struggling, and she slowly let go and removed herself from his back. "Forgive me. I didn't know, I wasn't supposed to." Dark blood began to drip from the nose and eyes of the green-skinned warrior, and he soon lost the ability to hold up his head. A moment later, his heart stopped beating entirely. "What the hell?" Bianca asked in horror. The three of them instinctively took a step back as they tried to process everything that had just occurred. "We've lost signal," the cameraman suddenly said. "I don't think they caught any of that." "Hell, that's probably for the best," Mal muttered as he rubbed his temples. He could only imagine the amount of fear and panic that would occur outside if everyday humans witnessed that scene. It was nothing less than chilling, and it was exactly the kind of thing that would keep people awake at night. "Let's keep moving." I want to hurry and get out of here as fast as humanly possible, Aisha suggested. Bianca and Mal nodded slowly in agreement, and the two of them followed behind their senior while remaining on their guard. They didn't run into any more enemies for a while after that, but they still couldn't relax with this eerie feeling breathing down their spines. It was as if they were being watched from every corner by a force beyond their perception. Finally, the group stumbled upon another large cavern, but this one was significantly different from the previous one. Once the eyes of the blessed landed on what was inside, their jaws went slack from the sheer absurdity. What the hell, there's no way. Just like before, the group found themselves in an enormous cavern with mana stones lining the surface of the ceiling. But unlike the previous scene where all of the stones were glowing with a bright blue light, these stones had already gone dim. In the center of the mass of stones was a dark black egg roughly the size of a men's shoebox. Bianca squinted her eyes as she stared at the ceiling, and she came to a shocking conclusion. That's a beast egg, and those are violet mana stones. Did that thing seriously drain them all? It would seem so. What the hell kind of beast can absorb that much energy? Beast eggs are another rare item that can be found in dungeons. Inside are various creatures with their own mystical abilities, which are capable of forming blood pacts with humans. Through blood pacts, they can share senses, abilities, and even fuse together to act as one. They are so rare that it'd be easier to find a cluster of violet mana stones, gift-wrapped with a note from Santa. Luna is currently in possession of the only one in the United States, a young kitsune she calls Shiro. And almost every day, she receives offers of billions of dollars from those who are asking to buy her. Typically, beast eggs can only be found in mana-rich environments that are extremely isolated. Finding one in a cave like this, where there were hobgoblins and ogres walking around, was nigh inconceivable. The stream is back up and the viewers are going crazy. Everyone is saying that this is the most insane dungeon in history, the cameraman exclaimed. Well, they certainly wouldn't be wrong, Mal muttered. It was still rather hard for him to be excited about all of this. All of these treasures and goodies being dangled so openly in his face made him rather nervous. This was only his second dungeon, and yet he could not shake the feeling that he had intruded somewhere that he did not belong. No sooner did he have the thought that a horrifying and scratchy voice confirmed his suspicions. Humans? Here? Oh no, this will not do. This most certainly will not do. Almost immediately, the trio of blessed formed a circle around the vulnerable cameraman as they searched for the source of the hag-like voice. Always intruding where you are unwanted, always trying to take what does not belong to you. You are a consistent stain on the world. Whoosh. In the blink of an eye, a horrifying old woman appeared in front of Bianca. She had greasy gray hair that dropped all the way to her feet, and filthy cracked nails that were 5 inches long. The old woman had egregiously long limbs and stood nearly shoulder to shoulder with Malachi, although her body was seemingly made out of nothing but skin and bones. She raised her wiry old hand and prepared to slice Bianca's head off with her dagger-like nails. Bianca, get back. Malachi's body reacted on its own, and he instinctively pushed his partner out of the way. Luckily he was able to save her, but unfortunately the cameraman was not fast enough, and his head immediately went flying. One down, she muttered. Aisha removed another weapon from her inventory, a shiny gold trident with blades made of some blue crystal. You'll pay for that, you freak, she roared as she thrust her weapon directly at the head of the boss. Tink. Aisha's eyes went wide as her weapon was caught with seemingly no effort. Pretty, but useless. We'll see about that. Her weapon began to glow with a bright blue light, and a giant volume of water shot out from the tip of her weapon. Boom. The boss took the full force of a geyser head-on, but she suffered no sort of discomfort other than suddenly becoming wet. It is as I said. The woman raised her arm and swiftly brought it down on the pole of Aisha's weapon, snapping it in half. In a display of great power and fluidity, the old woman lifted up her leg and kicked her hard in the stomach, sending her flying into a nearby wall. Crackle. Suddenly, the old woman let out a horrifying high-pitched scream as her entire body was engulfed in vicious black lightning. Ag. Bad humans. Very bad humans. Malachi continued to up the voltage on his lightning as if he were trying to overload a battery and make it explode. Realistically, he knew that his best friend was tough, but he didn't want to see her get hurt, and he would always avenge her if she was. Bianca finally recovered and slipped on her twin gauntlets that gave off a sweltering heat. Not wanting to waste the opportunity Mal had created, she lunged forward with eyes burning with determination. Boom. A powerful right hook to the jaw was enough to send the old woman flying, and she rolled to a stop on the ground a few feet away. Bianca was about to continue her offense, when she finally looked down at her gauntlet and saw that there was a strange material clinging to it. What is this? Upon closer inspection, she realized that what she was looking at was a mass of skin, but there was no sign of blood or any other tissues. It was as if it had been cleanly peeled off a surface and hastily glued onto another. Aisha finally recovered and came back to Bianca's side. I can't believe that thing broke my weapon. I didn't even know that was possible. Something tells me that this boss isn't like normal ones. Malachi muttered. And so far, we haven't seen half of what it can really do. As if to prove his point, the boss finally began to stir on the ground. Disgraceful, disgusting. Taking her clawed hands, she began to rip away her own skin, bit by bit. The treasured must be protected, mustn't allow them to get their hands on it. Once all of her skin was removed, the trio were horrified to see a creature unlike anything they had ever seen before. Outside the gate, Luna had a worried expression on her face as she looked at the last bit of footage that was captured before the cameraman was killed. That boy is practically bad luck at this point. Why does every dungeon he enters have to be so strange? She glanced at the swirling gate a few feet away from her and wondered if she should go inside. Last time she ran in to help Mal, she ended up being completely unneeded. After that experience, she had started to trust in Mal's abilities a bit more and no longer saw him as a young man who needed her help. That's right, this is for the best. No man wants to be with a woman who is constantly checking up on him, right? Nonsensical though it may have been, Luna began looking for any sort of method to rationalize her decision. And after a few more minutes, she believed that she had finally dissuaded herself from going inside. So why did it still feel like there was a knot in the pit of her stomach? Inadvertently, Luna made eye contact with Sei, who seemed to be looking at her with large brown eyes that were pleading sincerely. Damn it. Before Luna knew what was happening, her body was moving on its own as it carried her all the way to the entrance of the gate. Tying her hair up, she moved forward to step inside, but instead of coming cleanly out the other side, she felt as if she had walked right into a closed door. What? It seemed like Luna and Sei would have no choice but to place their faith in Malachi, as the gate had been completely closed off to outside visitors. 80 words hurt. Standing in front of the trio of Malachi, Aisha, and Bianca, was a woman that two of them never expected to see again. Aisha immediately recognized what was happening, and she began trying to put out a fire before it could spread. Mal, that's not Dash. Mom. She was a woman with beautiful brown skin and a head of dark curly hair with blonde ends. Just like Aubrey, she had kind yet mischievous amber eyes and an inviting smile. She wore dark black jeans and her favorite shirt that Malachi hated due to the cringy words written on the front. Mom. Boss. Forever. It was a shirt that he never expected to see again. Because she had been wearing it on the day she died. My little man is all grown up. I can't tell you how happy that makes me. I wish that your father and I had gotten to see you grow with our own eyes. When her tender and southern voice played in his ears, Malachi reflexively took a step back as his eyes began to water. Mal, listen to me. I know what you're thinking, but that is not Auntie. You have to see that. Aisha argued. She was beginning to get emotional as well, but she had to maintain a composed line of thought or else things were going to go very wrong very fast. By now, Bianca had gotten the gist of what was going on, but she wasn't quite sure of what was the right thing to do. Aisha, how can you say that? You don't recognize the woman you peed on when you were 2? Mal's mother said. It's a trick. Don't listen to anything that she's saying. Aisha yelled with a red face. But Malachi could hardly even hear. His entire world hadn't stopped spinning ever since his mother showed up, and now he felt like he was stuck in some kind of twisted dream. You've become so successful, and yet you still remain in school. I'm glad you haven't forgotten about the promise you made to me. That's all your dad and I ever wanted for you. She slowly began to walk forward, while maintaining a calm and nonviolent demeanor. I'm sorry that your father and I left you behind, but I need you to trust me now so that we can all be together again. Mal shakily took another involuntary step backwards as he tried to control his rapidly beating heart rate. What do you? A warm yet eerie smile spread across the lips of Mal's mother, making Mal's heart drop to the bottom of his boots. I need you to die for me, okay? Whoosh. Faster than the eyes could see, Mel's mother moved directly in front of him and pierced through his chest with long, dagger-like fingers. Mel. No. Once Mel went down, Aisha and Bianca lunged forward to get his attacker away from him. Mel's mother easily avoided a kick to the stomach from Aisha and a superheated punch from Bianca, and smiled madly as she grabbed the both of them by their necks and held them up into the air. My son has such cute girls around him. I thank you for taking care of him all this time, but he needs to come back to me now. The appearance of the creature had become truly monstrous, with the scare of her eyes becoming black and her teeth becoming pointed like that of a shark. He's not your son. Boom. Slice. Finally, Bianca landed another strong right hook on the jaw of the creature while Aisha removed another weapon from her inventory. A large one-handed axe easily cut through the arms of the doppelganger, allowing both girls to fall harmlessly to the ground. Why are you girls trying to harm me? Don't you know how much my family has suffered already? The creature regrew its arms at an astounding rate, and it immediately kicked Aisha to the side before proceeding to sit on top of Bianca and strangled her mercilessly. You're not good enough for my son. Even if you try to fool him with this whorish new appearance, it will do you no good. You will always be that same ugly bitch that even your own mother didn't want. Bianca wasn't sure what hurt more, the feeling of her windpipe being crushed or the scathing words of this woman she'd never even met before. Shut up, shut up. As tears filled Bianca's eyes, she became desperate to make this creature go away, no matter what it took. For a moment, she lost control of her powers and the two of them were engulfed in a smoldering red flame. Unfortunately, the creature seemed to be impervious to Bianca's flame, and instead smiled eerily as if it were submerged in a warm bath. How invigorating. Crack. Before Bianca even realized what happened, the doppelganger brutally head-butted her into unconsciousness. The flames surrounding the two of them were extinguished in the blink of an eye, and now the boss seemed to be making some sort of disappointed expression. Darn. I'm all chilly again. Get off of her. Bang. Aisha had finally recovered and attacked the doppelganger with a large black hammer that was almost the same size as her. However, she never expected for the boss to catch it with one hand and give her another eerily warm smile. Aisha honey, you have to be a dear and wait a moment, okay? This girl will be dead in a second and then I can play with you all you want. Not only was Bianca bleeding from her forehead, but the doppelganger still maintained a tight grip on her throat with one hand. If Aisha didn't do anything soon, her friend was going to die and there wasn't going to be anything they could do about it. Take off my aunt's face, you fucking freak. You're not her. Freak. How dare you say that to me when you're the disgusting one? I treated you like family all of your life and as soon as I died you laid your hands on my only daughter. You're revolting. Even though Aisha knew that these words weren't coming from the real Mrs. Saint, it still knocked the wind out of her sails to hear such harmful words. In that brief moment of hesitation, the doppelganger finally released Bianca and dove at Aisha. The boss held the young woman on her shoulder and drove her straight into a nearby wall, nearly planting her inside of it. Boom. NOV/L/B/JNN. The cavern walls shook violently, and Aisha let out a heart-wrenching scream as her abdomen was pierced by the claws of her monstrous enemy. My. You always made fun of my Mel for being a crybaby as kids, but now it seems like you're the one who's always whining. Marianne and Trevor must be so ashamed. The mention of her parents caused Aisha to see red, and before she knew it she was lashing out, uncaring of the pain coursing through her abdomen. Never say their names. Boom. Aisha punched the face of her aunt with all of her strength, but only succeeded in knocking out a single tooth. Not cute, Aisha, not cute at all. With whirlwind speed, the doppelganger struck Aisha in the face with its own version of a right hook, and the difference in strength between the two was apparent to all. Boom. The doppelganger's punch had nearly knocked Aisha unconscious, but someone who can hold multiple blessings is certainly more durable than most. Evidently the boss did not seem to like that its attack did not immediately crush its opponent's head. So stubborn, why won't you just die so that my family can be happy? We don't need you, we don't need you, we don't need you. Boom. 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 The doppelganger continued to unleash a storm of blows onto Aisha's beautiful face, with the goal of disfiguring her. With every blow that struck Aisha's face, the cavern would tremble horribly as if it was all going to come down at any second. Bit by bit, large violet mana stones began to fall from the ceiling. The doppelganger remained blissfully unaware that such a thing was going on, as its sole focus was on brutalizing the human girl in front of it. As soon as the egg made contact with Malachi's blood, its descent came to a complete stop and it began to float in the air on its own. 1134. However, it forgot all about a key item that it was supposed to be protecting. The beast egg that was so firmly lodged into the ceiling before, was now not as secure, and the continuous trembling of the cavern was causing it to lose more and more stability. Boom! Finally, with one last shake, the egg became dislodged and was in a free fall. Malachi was still lying on the ground, right where his mother had left him. Her attack pierced through his lungs and even injured his spinal cord, so he was in no condition to fight even if he was of sound mind. For the past 7 minutes, he had been lying in a concerningly large pool of his own blood. His eyes fluttered open just in time to see a spherical black object facing from the sky. As soon as the egg made contact with Malachi's blood, its descent came to a complete stop and it began to float in the air on its own. Finally, the doppelganger sensed that something was wrong, and turned around to see the treasured item that she was supposed to be protecting in the vicinity of one of these humans. The treasured Nuo. Despite the protests of the creature, the beast egg became a small white light that made a beeline directly for Malachi. It entered the space directly between his eyes, and soon a small black tattoo in the shape of a diamond appeared on his forehead. Unforgivable. Unforgivably. I hope you guys like this chapter. I tried to make it as emotional as possible while also ensuring that it remained a difficult fight. I hope I did you all proud. Anathashisha. The screaming of the doppelganger was truly horrendous, and Malachi felt like he was listening to some kind of dreadful sonnet. When his eyes fluttered open, the first thing he saw was the beautiful and always cheery Bianca, with a face that was smeared with blood. On the other side of the cavern, he could see Aisha embedded into the stone wall. Not only was she bleeding from her abdomen, but she was also bleeding heavily from her face, just like Bianca. Although it was very clear that she had endured much worse treatment, as the sight of her was nothing short of heartbreaking. Spurred on by the scene of the women he cared about hurt, Malachi buried his knuckles in the dirt as he finally started to push himself up from the ground. He was only able to lift his head up a few inches away from the dirt before a foot landed on the nape of his neck and brutally forced him back down. Give back the treasured, you revolting creature. Do what your mother tells you. Why do you have to be such a disgrace? The doppelganger continued to stomp on top of Malachi's head with seemingly no end in sight. Damn. I have to get us out of this. Mal thought. Crackle. Malachi ran a strong current of electricity all over his body, and the doppelganger was temporarily stunned by the voltage. Malachi used this brief opening to escape from underneath the boss and put some much-needed space between them. Even though his vision was still blurry from having his head stomped in, he could now see very clearly that this thing wasn't his mother. Why the hell do you look like that? You think this shit is funny? 10 daggers flew out of Malachi's pockets on their own and pointed at the monster wearing his mother's face. However, the creature seemed to be largely unconcerned with anything that did not involve the beast egg that had been taken from it. You thief, give it back. Once again, the doppelganger displayed inhuman speed as it rushed at Mal before he could even react. Boom. After receiving a hard punch to the stomach, Mal's body was temporarily lifted from the ground and he felt a few of his organs rupture. Ugh. The doppelganger immediately snatched him out of the air by his neck and held him above her head. Give it back, give it back, give it back. She continued to pummel his ribs and abdomen with her free hand, and even Mal's electric bursts no longer seemed to be working to dissuade her. Damn it, why is this happening? Malachi blinked, and suddenly he was no longer in the boss room getting pummeled, but in a black void filled with stars. NOV/L/B/JNN. All around him, he was surrounded by a swirling galaxy filled with beautiful dark colors. It took him a moment to realize that he was not alone and he was currently in a woman's embrace with a pair of breasts pressed against his back. It's been too long since we've had a chat, my son. Nyx? The goddess of the night suddenly released Malachi and spun him around to face her. She gently cupped her face in his hands and looked at him with a pitiful expression. Malachi, do you know that I do not particularly like humans? Mal was admittedly surprised that she so openly admitted such a thing, but he nodded yes nonetheless. Studying with Rowan had allowed him to learn a great deal about Nyx as well as her usual disdain for humanity. But you, my boy, are the exception. I love you very much, because I see in you all of the qualities that most of them claim to embody. And even if you are not perfect, you have never once stopped growing. Suddenly, her black eyes became a bit more serious as she continued. But my dear boy, that is also why you are having such a difficult time lately. What do you mean? You're too trusting. You believe that most everyone is honest and has good intentions just because you do, and that is simply not the case. You are also gentle and overflowing with hope, but that is also the reason why the creature you are currently facing was able to manipulate you so. Malachi flinched in his Nyx's gentle grasp, and her eyes softened a bit as she took his hands. Do you know why the mimic took the form of your mother? No. I don't. It is because you had the potential to harm it and were also the easiest to manipulate. It read your memories in an instant and used its shape-shifting abilities to create a scenario you desperately wanted to believe. Malachi hung his head in shame. His emotions had put both Bianca and Aisha in jeopardy, and it was all the fault of his foolish delusions. Nyx quietly pressed her forehead against his and spoke to him so gently that he hardly heard her. Even though I am not the mother who gave birth to you, will you listen to me anyway? Malachi nodded without a moment's hesitation, and Nyx spoke to him as if she were really his parent. If you're going to be kind, then you must also be conscious. I'm not asking you to turn into the same kind of egotistical monster that we both despise, but I am telling you that you should learn how to see things for what they are, and act accordingly. If you do not learn this soon, then the likelihood of you being taken advantage of and the people that you love being hurt as a result increases every day. That was undoubtedly Malachi's worst nightmare, and he could not imagine the amount of guilt he would feel if any of the women around him suffered so much as a scratch. I won't let that happen. I'll do whatever it takes. Nyx revealed a smile more beautiful than all of the stars in the sky and gave the young man a reassuring hug. You know that I think of you as my own son, don't you? I do. He said with a mild guilty feeling. Fufufu, don't be uncomfortable. I am not trying to replace the mother you lost, but I do want to care for you in my own special way. I hope that you'll eventually come to see me as such, but I will not force you. Before Malachi could respond, he received a gentle yet firm push that sent him falling backwards. Nyx waved him goodbye with her same charming smile, and said a sentence that nearly made his eyes pop out of his skull. I'll be coming to visit you soon. And I'll be having a little chat with these 3 women who seem to have fallen in love with you. That sounds, wait, 3? Nyx had already met Sei and approved of her, so why was she saying there were 3 more women left for her to meet? He knew about Luna and Bianca, but other than that, who else could it be? Well, I guess I'll find out soon enough. Before he vanished, he smiled helplessly and let the goddess know that he would be waiting for her. Sounds good. I'll see you then, mother. After he left the space, Nyx smiled warmly as she placed a hand over her chest. She was quite surprised to hear Malachi call her mother so suddenly, and it had sincerely warmed her ancient heart. She was so overcome with happiness she was tempted to plunge the world into eternal darkness and give it to her son with a bow wrapped around it. You have no idea what it means to accept me as your mother, my son. I am quite touched. As the doppelganger held Mal's body overhead, a chill ran down her spine and she felt an instinctive sense of danger. She quickly released the young man and did a massive backwards leap before crawling up the wall like some kind of monstrous spider. What is this? She hissed. She watched in horror as the shadows within the room vibrated and rushed directly towards Malachi. All of the surrounding darkness was easily absorbed by his body, and his flesh and skin burned away from the drastic influx of energy. The clothes he was wearing simply passed through his body harmlessly, as if they were not capable of making contact with him in this form. Slowly, Malachi stood up and revealed a completely changed physique. All of the features that made him such a handsome and easily recognizable man were now gone, save for his very long dreadlocks. His body was now resembled a living mass of darkness, stars, and nebulas, quite similar to that of Nyx. But unlike her, he had no eyes, nose, mouth, or ears. Even though he hadn't actually done anything, the mimic was already trembling with fear. Malachi's power was now very clearly leagues above her own, and she had no choice but to rely on his weak heart to remain alive and recover the egg she was supposed to protect. My son, you wouldn't hurt your mother, would you? You know how much I love you. I'm just very sick and I need you to help me with Dash. Boo. Outside the gate, Luna had been beside herself with worry. She hadn't moved from her place in front of the gate ever since she failed to enter earlier. The guildmaster had been anxiously awaiting any sort of change from the swirling void, and after 20 minutes she finally got what she wished for. She could feel cool air being sucked into the dungeon once again, and she knew immediately that something had changed. Hesitantly, she stuck her hand out and checked to see if her hypothesis was correct, and let out a massive sigh of relief when she realized that whatever barrier inhibiting her before was no longer present. "I'm heading inside," she yelled over her shoulder. As soon as she passed through the gate, she emerged within a dark cavern that smelled like burned goblin. But as soon as she took a single step, she very nearly fell over. Whatever was inside of here, it was unlike anything she had ever felt before. This pressure was so enormous and overwhelming that she didn't dare to take a step forward, and she almost forgot why she came here. Flash! The tattoo on Luna's forehead shone brightly, and her magical beast Shiro appeared out of thin air. "Arf! What are you doing? Get back here, it's dangerous." The fox paid her no mind and ran down a tunnel while barking orders at her. "Arf! Bring your ass." Luna tried to recall her pet back into herself using their connection, but the small fox seemed to be having none of it. She bit her lip hard to give her body the shock she needed to move, and once there was a small line of blood running down her chin, she finally chased after her rowdy pet. The two traveled deeper and deeper into the dark cave, and Luna felt like the deeper she went inside the more likely it would be that she fainted from the overwhelming pressure. She had no idea why Shiro was completely fine in this atmosphere and was even completely energetic. Usually she had a hard time trying to get the little fucker off the couch at home, but now it was running around like it had just had 20 cups of coffee. Eventually, Shiro led Luna all the way into the last room that was recorded by the cameraman, but it looked different. The northernmost wall had been erased. It now looked like another huge tunnel had been created, when this room was very clearly a dead end before. But Luna was now struggling so much to pull in a single breath of air that she hardly even noticed the landscape changes. The source of this horrible pressure was the thing that was standing above the bodies of Aisha and Bianca. It was utterly unlike anything she had ever encountered before. Somehow, it was both the most beautiful thing she had ever seen and also the most frightening. Standing before her was a mass of darkness, stars, and swirling nebulas in the shape of a man. It had no eyes, ears, nose, or mouth, but Luna did notice that it seemed to have something resembling very long hair on the top of its head. The longer she stared at the creature, the more she felt like she knew what it might have been, but she dared not believe it. "And Malachi. That's you, right? Arf. Goddamn, you look cool as fuck." The being seemed to only just now be aware that there was someone in the room with it, and it slowly started walking towards her. "My Luna." Mal's voice was a great deal deeper than usual and seemed to have its own echo, and it caused small shivers to run down Luna's spine. She couldn't bring herself to step forwards or backwards, and her body was seemingly locked in place as she watched him approach her. "Mal, what happened here?" After the cameraman was killed, we dash. "I've been dreaming, Luna, but fortunately I was able to wake up before you, or anyone else I love was harmed as a result of my short-sightedness." Luna didn't hear shit else that Mal said after he basically confessed that he loved her. Her mind was now submerged by a flurry of thoughts and complex emotions that she didn't fully understand. I Luna. Malachi took the face of the mature beauty into his hands and pressed their foreheads together. Even though he did not have any eyes, she still felt as though she could feel him staring into the depths of her very soul. "I no longer care about protecting everyone in this world, all that matters to me now is that I never have to watch any of you be harmed again. To that end I will." Gradually, Malachi's words began to trail off and he started to sound like he was further and further away. He stumbled a bit as if he were having trouble keeping his body upright, and Luna had to support him so that he did not fall over. "Mal? What's wrong? I don't understand." Suddenly, particles of dust began to converge on Malachi's body and his skin was gradually reformed as he returned to normal. Tired. His head slumped over onto Luna's shoulder, and a moment later he was snoring lightly as if he was exhausted beyond belief. "What are you?" "Kya?" Luna reflexively stepped back and let Mal fall to the ground when she realized that he was naked, and she tried her best to calm her rapidly beating heartbeat. Shiro walked towards his body and began sniffing him as if she'd found something interesting about the nude young man. Shiro. Get away from him while he's, oh my god. While trying to reprimand her beast, Luna's eyes accidentally fell somewhere that they shouldn't have and her face became significantly redder. I thought Say was exaggerating. Arf arf. And that's while he's at rest. Seems like you're in for a tough time in the future. Luna didn't know exactly what the small fox was saying, but due to their connection, she did have a vague understanding of what she was thinking. And she was less than pleased. Perverted girl. I should shave you bald. Arf. Just try it and I'll tinkle in your good teacups. Luna rolled her eyes in frustration and turned her eyes back to her three subordinates who were all unconscious on the ground. Shiro confirmed that the girls were alive and healing, but she couldn't tell when they would wake up. After sweeping the room, she found 3 shiny items that she assumed to be loot from the boss and finally let out a deeply held sigh. You all have been through so much. I'm very proud. She said sincerely. Let's get you all out of here. 2 days later. A single twitch from him was all it took for Say's eyes to flash open, and she seemed to be fully awake. Honey. When Malachi awoke, it was the middle of the night and he was in his bedroom at home. Say was sleeping next to him, wearing her usual outfit of an oversized t-shirt and panties, and was clutching his hand so tightly that he had practically lost all feeling. A single twitch from him was all it took for Say's eyes to flash open, and she seemed to be fully awake. Honey. Oof. Say practically flung herself on top of Malachi, and the young man was smushed by her very large breasts. Although judging by the fact that he made no attempts to move, clearly he was fine suffocating like this. You have no idea how worried I was. When Luna brought the 3 of you out, you were all unconscious, and she wouldn't tell us how you killed the boss. Malachi briefly tried to recall the events that had transpired inside of the dungeon and was reminded of a horrifyingly powerful new form that he had almost no control over. It was almost as if everything he did while in that state was somehow on autopilot. What happened? How are you feeling? I'm sure you're hungry, right? I can go and dash. Malachi placed both of his arms around his girlfriend in the hopes of calming her down. He was touched by all of her concern and worry, but this was all he needed right now. Can we just stay like this for a moment? I don't want you to go anywhere. Oh, okay. The 2 of them lay intertwined like that for quite a while, and eventually Mal began to tell her about everything that he saw inside of the dungeon. Say was completely taken aback and bewildered by the creature that could take on the appearance of Malachi's mother, and she immediately became concerned about the damage done to his mental state. Malachi loved both of his parents dearly, but those close to him knew that he was the most fond of his mother. She laid the foundation of everything that he strove to be, and she was without a doubt the greatest influence in his life. Honey, I'm so sorry. Say said sincerely. I can't imagine how horrible it must have been for you to have her memory used against you like that. Malachi deepened his embrace with Say and buried his head in the crook of her neck. It wasn't the best feeling, won't lie. But I think what was worse than that was seeing Bianca and Aisha broken like that. Do you know if they're doing okay? Say smiled softly when she saw that the monster hadn't broken his gentle heart that was always concerned about others. I think they're still in the hospital. Bianca is awake but Aisha is still sleeping. Malachi nodded slowly as his hands sank further and further into Say's soft body. Kinda surprised I didn't wake up in a hospital myself. Though I've kinda had my fill of them if I'm being honest. Suddenly Say was reminded of something very important that she wanted to talk to Malachi about and she stopped his hands before he could make her forget. About that. Luna tried to take you to the hospital but, apparently Nyx appeared in front of her and told her that such a thing wasn't necessary. Say explained. What? Why not? As a response, Say looked like she was having a hard time figuring out what to say. Honey, that form you took, how much can you recall about it? Not a lot for Real. I just know that I was crazy powerful. Well, yes, but that form also seems to have killed you in a sense. Say what now? Say tried her best to recall Luna's explanation that was filled with terms that she didn't understand. Well, basically in that state you were something like sentient darkness and energy and because of that your physical body was completely destroyed. Apparently after you returned to normal you were still only a layer of skin over that swirling mass that Luna described. Over the past few days you literally have been regrowing your flesh and bones. Malachi already felt like his head was going to explode, but a sudden voice that he was all too familiar with nearly caused him to leap out of his skin. That's right, isn't that cool? Kya. What the hell? Nyx had appeared as she always did, silently and wearing a beautiful and radiant smile. She was sitting casually in a chair in the corner of the room, wearing her usual black dress with no shoes. Fufu, the two of you should be more aware of your surroundings. This is why Serana has almost caught you two in the middle of your intimacy so many times before. Ah. The couple looked at each other briefly before making a silent vow to be more careful in the future. Anyway, this is what it means to accept me as your mother, Mel. The power at your disposal is truly great, but I must also warn you of something. Nyx's tone became uncharacteristically serious, and Malachi knew that whatever warning she was about to give was a stern one. If you use that form too much, you will cease to be human. N/O/vel/b/and.c//om. It seemed like all sound had been sucked out of the room, and both Malachi and Say stared back at Nyx with shocked expressions. What do you mean? Say asked in a hushed voice. I mean that his body will be just as it was in the dungeon, the avatar of night itself. Continued usage will cause his body to become permanently accustomed to the changes, and as a result he will be something more than a blessed, less than a god, but undoubtedly not mortal. He won't need to sleep, eat, or piss, and he will heal from even the most grievous of wounds so long as they are not special in origin. So far, Mel was hearing nothing but benefits. So why was his mother still acting like it was such a bad thing? But, it also means that you will not be able to have children and that you will be truly immortal, and that is a very lonely road. Those girls Luna and Bianca will live for a few hundred years, but sweet Say here and that cute little, oops, I've almost said too much. Nyx said as she covered her mouth. Mel's entire body suddenly tensed up. Living without the people he loved by his side, it was a nightmare that he didn't even want to consider. He and Luna might not have been in an official relationship yet, and there were still things to be sorted out with Bianca, but he knew that he enjoyed their company beyond belief. And what about Aisha, Aubrey, Serana, and even Anna? Mel was surprised when such an unfamiliar name bubbled up into his mind, but he could not help but admit that the beautiful young woman had caught his eye and begun to grow on him. Relationships aside, he had never thought about having kids before. But he couldn't say for sure that he didn't want them, and he also wasn't sure how the girls felt about them either. More than anything else, he believed that he'd like to have the option. Now he wasn't so sure if he ever wanted to use that power again. Tisk. Nyx suddenly made an annoyed expression as she clicked her teeth, signaling that her time here had run out. I'm sorry, my son, but this will probably be the last time I'm able to visit you for a while. I wish I could stick around to help you make a decision, but unfortunately even we gods do not get everything that we want. She stood up from her seat and came beside the bed and took the hands of both her son and his girlfriend. I will support you too no matter what decision you make, I just wanted you to be aware of all of the options that lie in front of you. Surprisingly, she gave the two of them a light kiss on the forehead before she vanished right before their eyes. Malachi and Say sat in silence for a moment after Nyx left, and it was clear that both of them were still trying to process everything that they'd just heard. Finally, Mel decided to break the ice and asked the very uncomfortable question. Say, are you Dash? Honey. Say suddenly straddled Malachi and took his face into her hands. When I decided to be with you, I was already prepared for the reality that I might die before you do, and as far as kids are concerned. I did not enjoy being pregnant the first time around, so I got my tubes tied after Serana was born. Suddenly Mel remembered that he and Say had never once used a condom and he always finished inside of her. Blessed generally have lower birth rates, but with the amount of sex the two of them had he should have already figured that there was some sort of extra factor at work. Tears fell from both of their eyes as they shrugged off their clothes and embraced each other like it was the very first time. So I don't want you to let me interfere in your decision. You do whatever you feel is best so that you can protect us. As always, Say's words were incredibly genuine and seemed to hit Malachi directly in the heart. As he pulled her in for a kiss, he realized that there was no way he could ever live without experiencing the sensation of these lips. At any point in his life. Tears fell from both of their eyes as they shrugged off their clothes and embraced each other like it was the very first time. Or the very last. In the morning, Mel got up, despite Say clinging onto his arm in her sleep. He wanted to stay in bed with her and spend the entire day intertwined, but after last night he felt like he had to do something with himself or risk going insane. Since he was technically still in the middle of working on a project, he texted Anna and asked where he should meet her today and received an almost immediate response. After he assured her that he was fine to be out, she texted him the address of the music shop where she worked and told him to meet her at 10. He got dressed in a simple outfit of black sweats, a compression shirt and slides, before he prepared to leave his house. Surana seemed to have left already to work on her own project, and didn't seem to be aware that Mel was awake yet. She sure did leave me a lot of messages to read when I woke up though. He thought as he looked at his phone. Not just her, but his sister and practically everyone from Immortal Moon had wished him a speedy recovery. It made him remember the girls that were wounded alongside him, and he silently decided to go and visit them before the day was over. Opening the door to his apartment, he was surprised when he found the very beautiful Luna Autumn standing outside looking flustered. "Luna? Hello," she said politely. Mel could not help but notice that her cheeks were unusually pink. And judging from the way she was constantly avoiding his gaze, he concluded that she did not expect him to be awake. "I'm glad you're okay, you have no idea how worried I was. Sorry to scare you," he said with a helpless smile. "You know I'm the type who has to make things interesting." Foo, yes, I do." It seemed like his attempt to break the ice had been somewhat successful as Luna no longer seemed to be as tense as before. Now that she was more relaxed, she was able to tell him about the gala that she was throwing for the guild and a few special guests. After raiding that last dungeon, the value of Immortal Moon shot up tremendously and they were now one of the top 5 richest guilds in the entire world. As such, Luna was in quite the celebratory mood. "You're free to bring dates, of course, I'm sure that Say will be delighted to." "Oh?" Suddenly, Luna came closer to Malachi and stared hard at the diamond-shaped mark on his forehead. "No wonder we couldn't find the beast egg, when did you fuse with it?" "I'm not too sure," Mal said honestly as he tried not to peep down Luna's shirt. "When I woke up, that mark was just there, but I don't feel any different." "You won't notice anything until your beast actually hatches, but who knows when that will be. Nonetheless, it seems like you've got your hands on a great treasure." For some reason, Mel found Luna's bright pink eyes to be particularly beautiful this morning, and he felt like it would be easy to get lost in them. "Yeah, I really do." Luna suddenly became aware of just how close she'd gotten to Mel, and she was reminded of the last time they were close together like this. "Mel, do you remember what you said to me in the dungeon?" It was another sunny and warm day outside of Moriarty Memorial Hospital. Aubrey Saint was walking through the halls wearing a beautiful violet dress and with her hair up in a bun, humming casually and carrying a small bouquet. It had been 2 whole days since her brother and her girlfriend were injured in a dungeon, and she had been traveling back and forth between the two of them a lot. Her brother didn't show any signs of waking up when she left the house last night, so now she was here to see Aisha. She would be lying if she said she wasn't worried, but luckily she had somehow managed to keep herself from falling apart during this stressful time. As she walked through the hallway, she passed by a hospital room with a familiar girl inside. Bianca Tate was sitting up in her hospital bed, staring silently at the space in front of her and seemingly very deep in thought. Aubrey suddenly came to a complete standstill as she hesitantly knocked on the door and poked her head inside. "Hello, is this a bad time?" Bianca jolted slightly as if she hadn't heard Aubrey approaching, and she smiled exhaustedly when she saw who it was. "Nah, of course not. Come right on in." Aubrey hesitantly stepped inside and sat down on the edge of Bianca's bed. "How are you feeling? You guys came out of there pretty beaten up." "Why yet, it was definitely an unpleasant experience," she recalled. Aubrey could tell that there was more brewing underneath the surface, but she wasn't exactly sure if she should pry. She didn't know Bianca very well, and she had no idea if such a thing would be unwelcome. Eventually, she just decided to grit her teeth and make it known that she was there should Bianca need someone to confide in. "I know that we may not be as close as you and my brother are, but if you're important to him, then you're important to me, so I'm always here to talk." Aubrey's words inadvertently caused Bianca's lower lip to tremble as she held back a wave of tears. "Am I really important to him?" "Ah. Don't cry." "But, yes?" Aubrey was horribly confused, and she had no idea what part of what she said could have set her off. She was just hoping that she didn't somehow make things worse. Bianca hung her head low, and her entire body was shaking. "You know, this isn't me. Not the real me anyway." "Pardon?" "I was nobody before I got blessed. I was worse than garbage. When it finally happened, I was so overjoyed that I made a vow to change myself completely. I changed the way I spoke, I wore sexier clothes, and I even tried to act more extroverted just so that people would like me. And it worked for a while, but I don't think I can do it anymore. Unconsciously, Bianca's body began to heat up as she cried and the room became noticeably warmer. Aubrey had no choice but to get off the bed and take a few steps back, but even then she still felt like she was beginning to sweat. When he sees what I'm really like and how I really am, then he probably won't like me anymore. And it'll be all my fault, because I'm the one who tried to trick him in the first place. By now, Aubrey could fully understand what was going on, but she really couldn't believe it. Why was everyone so crazy over her brother? He made her eat his boogers as kids. What part of that did girls find sexy? I should come out with my own documentary or something. I have plenty of material. She thought jokingly. It's just like she said. I'm not good enough for him and I never will. Bianca. Aubrey finally couldn't take the heat anymore and decided to speak up, causing the crying girl to regain control of her powers. I thought you liked my brother. What? I do, but then why are you acting like you don't know the kind of person he is? If he knew just how much suffering you were going through for his sake, he'd be crushed. Bianca suddenly froze up like she'd finally had some kind of realization and remained motionless. I'm sorry that people treated you poorly before you got your powers, and it shouldn't have made you feel like you had to become an entirely different person. You deserve to be yourself and feel comfortable in your own skin no matter what, and as long as you are still the same sweet girl that you've always been, I'm sure my brother can fall in love with that version too. And if he doesn't, I'll crush his nuts for breaking your heart. Aubrey thought. Finally, Bianca wiped her face and laughed half-heartedly. Do you really think so? Yeah, Mal's standards aren't really all that high. As long as you genuinely care about him and get along with Say, there's no way that you won't have him stuck. He. I'll take your word for that then. Can I ask you something else? Sure. Bianca gripped her bedsheets uncomfortably as she tried to ask the question on her mind without it coming off as strange. Do you think I'm the kind of girl that your mother would have approved of? Aubrey smiled brightly as she recalled the woman who she and her brother idolized more than anything. Bianca, the fact that you would even ask means that you are exactly the kind of girl she would have wanted as a daughter-in-law. More tears fell from Bianca's face, but instead of being ones of sorrow, these contained an indescribable joy. Thank you. After leaving Bianca, Aubrey headed directly into Aisha's room and received an extremely pleasant surprise. You're awake. Oof. NOVLB //JNN. Aisha had been sitting up on her bed for all of 2 minutes before her girlfriend came barreling into the room and knocked her over again. Aubrey? Why your boobs are smothering me. I am sorry, just deal with it for a few more seconds. You really have no idea just how worried I have been. You two are such an adorable couple. Aubrey's entire body stiffened up when she heard a very familiar voice coming from right beside her. Looking up, she found a middle-aged couple with completely different aesthetics. The man looked like a cross between a biker and a pro wrestler, with a body that was littered with muscles and tattoos and was stuffed inside of a button-down shirt and dress pants. He had a bald head with a full white beard that was reminiscent of Santa Claus, and one of the fondest memories of Malachi and Aubrey's childhood was when this man would come over to their house in a matching red suit. Sitting on his lap was a much daintier woman with long blonde hair and a charming figure. She wore her usual glasses paired with a vibrant orange sundress, with a sweater hastily thrown over her shoulders. These were Aisha's parents, Trevor and Marianne Rose. Sorry, Auntie and Uncle. Aubrey hurriedly pried herself off of Aisha and went to give her in-laws a hug. The two of them already knew and approved of their relationship, and as a result Aubrey had been spending a great deal of time around them as of late. As Aisha watched her girlfriend embrace her parents, she was reminded of the horrible words of the doppelganger inside of the dungeon. In the back of her mind she knew that creature wasn't really Mal and Aubrey's mother, and yet the words that it used to cut her seemed to be entirely too real. Would her aunt really not approve of her relationship with her daughter? It wasn't something that should have mattered, and yet Mrs. Saint had practically had a hand in raising Aisha, so she of course wanted her approval. And with how easily she was defeated in the dungeon as well as the fact that a shadowy organization was able to break into her multi-million-dollar home, she was also beginning to doubt her own strength. Did she have the right to be with someone whom she couldn't even protect? Honey? What's wrong? Marianne had been the first to notice the fact that something was wrong with her daughter, and was rightfully concerned. Me. I guess I'm just a bit tired, I guess. She lied. Aisha wasn't really one who enjoys worrying others, so if it wasn't something life-threatening, then she had a tendency to keep everything bottled up. But she had forgotten that everyone in this room had known her for all if not the majority of her life. They knew she wasn't being honest, without even putting any effort in. "Honey, if you don't tell us what the matter is, then you leave me no choice but to ask you in a way that you'll understand." Aisha's heart immediately dropped to her stomach. "Mom, please don't, I promise I am fine." "See?" The young girl forced a smile onto her face to try to dissuade her mother, but it was of little to no avail. As mentioned before, Malachi and Aisha were practically like siblings. That means that the two of them had come up with all kinds of ways to piss each other off over the years, and to this day Mal had come up with the most vile method yet. Teaching Aisha's mother how to use modern slang. "Honey, I don't want to embarrass you, but you're not giving me a choice. Lying is not very P of you. Mama, please." Trevor and Aubrey were still sitting in the corner of the room, trying desperately to hold in their laughter and yet still failing miserably. Much to Aisha's horror, her mother was still not done. "Why are you getting upset? Can't a big homie be concerned about her lil homie? I get it, I'm sorry. I'll spill, so please stop." Aisha pleaded. "That's a bet, twin. MOM. Mel, do you remember what you said to me inside of the dungeon?" Initially, the answer was no. Malachi had been so focused on everything that he'd heard last night from Nyx that everything he'd said to Luna was buried in the back of his mind. But as soon as she'd reminded him of it, all of the memories came flooding back to his mind and he became slightly embarrassed. He remembered how he'd possessively grabbed Luna and proclaimed her to be his, while also declaring his desire not to save the entire world, just the few inside of it he held dear. As mentioned before, in that form he was sort of on autopilot and had no real control of himself. The words buried in his heart simply burst forth without any real way to stop them, and he had ended up confessing his feelings to Luna in a terrible setting. "Ah. I'm sorry about that," he said as he scratched the back of his head. Luna was inadvertently hurt by his words as she took them to be a sign of amnesia. Unconsciously, she clenched her fists, as if she was going to sock Mal right in the jaw at any second. "Tell me, just so that I can be sure, are you sorry because you don't remember, or because you didn't mean it?" Neither. "What?" Malachi suddenly wrapped his arms around Luna's waist and pulled her in so that their bodies were pressed against each other. "I'm sorry that the first time I told you I loved you was in the middle of a dungeon that reeked of blood and goblin ash. I promise I'm usually a lot more romantic than that," he said with a helpless smile. Luna's face quickly became as red as the mark on her forehead as all of her anger vanished almost as quickly as it came. What were you doing?" "A do-over." Malachi leaned in, and Luna closed her eyes when she believed that she was about to receive a kiss, only to nearly jump out of her skin when she felt Malachi's warm breath by her ear. "I love you." Malachi released Luna immediately afterwards, and acted as if he hadn't done anything out of the ordinary. Walking past her, he began heading towards the elevator. "I have a project to do now, but I hope I'll see you later. You should go in and see Say too while you're here." Unfortunately, Luna's brain had all but short-circuited and she was now frozen in place right where Mal had left her. Aye. Why you?" Mal merely waved her goodbye with his usual warm smile and waved her goodbye. "See you later, Luna." Once the elevator closed, she still remained frozen in place for a full 3 minutes while she tried to calm her raging heartbeat. Eventually, Say woke up as well, and rubbed her eyes sleepily as she approached the stunned white-haired woman who was standing in the doorway. "Luna? Why are you standing outside like that? That man is dangerous." "Nanny?" Annalise worked at a hole-in-the-wall record shop on the north side of town about 20 minutes away from Mal's apartment. It was actually owned by her uncle, so more often than not she was able to slack off quite a bit. The interior was fairly nice, with almost every record imaginable in the form of either CDs or vinyls, and there were even a few instruments on sale in the back. In the days of streaming, record shops like this weren't very busy. And yet today, this store had already seen 10 customers ever since they opened 20 minutes ago, all because of the young woman who worked behind the counter. Today, Annalise was wearing simple black jean shorts and a dark crop top that barely contained her large bust. After seeing her from the window outside, young men of various ages practically trampled over themselves, trying to get inside. Some asked for help selecting a record they had no interest in listening to, while others were just openly ogling her. One particularly handsome man was a bit bolder than others and brought the most expensive guitar in the shop right up to the counter, while showing off what was nothing less than a movie star smile. "I'll take this and don't worry about the price, you can just swipe my card," he said, having no idea just how douche-like he sounded. Annalise maintained a blank expression as she proceeded to ring up his purchase, and the man became even more ensnared by her icy demeanor. "So, how many of these do I have to buy to get some special lessons from you?" Annalise seemed like she was already used to this kind of thing and did not even bother looking up on the register. "We're running a special. Buy 60 and I'll spit in your face." She handed the man his new guitar along with a receipt while looking at him with apparent disgust. While taking his guitar, the man also took the opportunity to grab Anna by the hand. "Come on, don't be like that, gorgeous. I just wanted to get a little more familiar with you, that's all." "Oh fucking well. Take your hands off of me before I put you on your ass." Finally, the man's permanent smile broke and he twisted his face up in anger. "You don't have to be such a bitch. Playing hard to get doesn't do any good when you're dressed like that." Suddenly, a small black cat leapt on top of the counter and began hissing at the man like he was feral. "What the hell do you want, cat?" The man growled. "He said duck." Annalise warned. "What?" Crack. Using her free hand, Annalise pulled a wooden bat from behind the counter and proceeded to knock the man clean across the face. The sound of a nose being broken echoed throughout the music shop, and the entire store came to a dead standstill. Anna had succeeded in knocking out the rude customer with a single swing, and casually dropped his new guitar over his unconscious body. She wiped the blood off her bat like it was no big deal and turned her attention to the small crowd watching from the corner. "Can one of you idiots take Mr. Zero Boundaries outside? He's bleeding all over the floor and I'm gonna have to mop that." If the young men inside were aroused by Annalise before, they were now terrified of her after witnessing how cruel she could be without batting an eye. We'll just come another day. I would prefer it if you didn't." "All right." Once the store had been emptied, Anna sighed before she reached behind the counter and pulled out a mop. "I could have helped you, you know?" Annalise smiled and glanced at the small black cat that was still sitting by the register. "And what is a cute little kitty like you gonna do? Nuzzle him to death?" Mal let out a huff as he watched Annalise mop up the blood as if she'd done this 1,000 times before. "I'm only like this 'cause you ain't really give me a choice." "Damn right, and you better stay like that, furball. Sir Anna told me how crazy things got when you were sighted at her restaurant and I absolutely do not want to deal with anything like that. She had enough trouble beating away all of her potential suitors. There was no way in hell she was going to deal with Mal's rabid fan base as well. She didn't even want him to be seen walking into this shop, so she had him change into a cat as soon as he arrived and she walked out to retrieve him herself." "Does that kind of thing happen often?" Mal asked. "Often enough that I keep a bat and a mop behind the counter." Anna answered plainly. "Why? You jealous?" Anna meant it as a joke, but her words really caused Mal to think. He had a special dislike for forceful men after everything that had happened to his sister, but that didn't explain this additional feeling of repulsion that he felt when that man grabbed Anna. The only time he'd even come close to feeling like that was when Say was being harassed by that doctor in the hospital, or when Rowan said something about Luna being too pretty for him. Mal took a moment to observe Anna fully. Revealing outfit aside, she was absolutely gorgeous and her well-done tattoos only added to her dangerous charm. Suddenly, Mal remembered how Nix kept referring to a fourth woman who was in love with him that he hadn't yet realized. "I don't know, maybe." Anna froze like a deer in headlights and her eyes nearly popped out of her skull. She calmed down her beating heartbeat by force and went back to mopping long after all of the blood had been wiped up. "Don't joke with me. You don't know me well enough to say something like that." "That's true," Mal admitted. "But I like what I know so far." Annalise finally showed some degree of emotion as she turned towards the talking cat on the counter. Mal had never seen Anna with such an embarrassed look on her face, and he briefly wondered if he was having some kind of fever dream. "Don't joke with me. I don't have anything in common with the girls you go for. You're better off saying things like that to some supermodel." "I don't have any interest in supermodels though. I like to eat and I hear they starve themselves." Anna didn't know what she was more mad about, the fact that Mal was joking in this situation or the fact that it actually made her want to laugh. Malachi disobeyed his very strict orders and changed back into his regular appearance. Despite having the eyes of a wild animal, the way he was looking at Anna was incredibly gentle and patient. "Do you like anything about me?" As always, Mal accidentally activated his blessing from Batet, leaving Anna with no choice but to tell the truth. Her eyes gradually lost focus and an answer fell out of her mouth before she could stop it. "Yes, everything." Ring. Just as Anna finally told Mal her feelings, the door to the store opened and a very familiar man strode inside. "Well, isn't this lovely? I'm suddenly in the mood to hear some Teddy Pendergrass." Malachi's blood immediately ran cold, and his teeth and nails sharpened instinctively. Anna didn't recognize this strange and flamboyant man who just walked into her store, and her cold and unfriendly demeanor returned like it never left. "Can I help you?" "Ah, not you, sweetheart. But the man behind you can." Malachi suppressed a growl that was desperately trying to escape from his throat. "What do you want, Lamont?" New character art of Mal, Luna, Bianca, Say, and Annalise is now up. Go check it out. Anastasia. Currently, Mal and Lamont were in an alley behind Anna's music store. The Dark Angel was as infuriating as ever and seemed to be blissfully unaware of just how bad Malachi wanted to tear his head off. "She's a real cutie, huh? And as thick as cold peanut butter, dash. Why the hell are you here?" Mal asked. Lamont glanced at Malachi and finally noticed something strange about him. Outwardly, Mal appeared to be very calm, almost like he had no emotions, but his eyes were smoldering. It was as if he was envisioning roasting him alive. "You seem different, buddy boy. Mad that I interrupted your steamy conversation? I promise you can get right back to the little goth girl after, dash. You're really starting to piss me off." This time, Lamont did not miss the sight of Mal's pointed teeth flashing as he spoke, and he realized that things were becoming dangerous. "All right. I'll get to the point then, buzzkill," he muttered as he rummaged into his jacket pocket. "If you pull out another card, I'm gonna torch that shit." "Aw, come on, not you too." Lamont finally threw his arms up in the air and let out a heavy sigh. "Whatever, I'm just here to tell you that the boss finally has time in their schedule to meet you, so I'm here to bring you to them. Now." Malachi's brow twitched as he tried his very best to keep his composure. "You've really got some shit timing. I'm kind of in the middle of something. You're the most famous man in the world, Mal. There will always be some girl or another who's trying to spread her legs for you, but you have to be dash." In the blink of an eye, Malachi lashed out and grabbed the chatty man by the neck. He didn't like the way Lamont had showed up and demanded that he go with him like he was some kind of errand boy. And he especially didn't like how he spoke about Anna like she was some kind of cheap woman. With Lamont at only 5 feet 10 inches and Malachi at 6 feet 5 inches, the sight of him being held up in the air was rather comical. "Kook. Mal, buddy, why were you being like this?" Lamont stammered as he tried to catch his breath. "I thought we really got along before, you know? Brothers before Hogue." Malachi suddenly tightened his grip on Lamont's neck, and dark black claws burst from his fingertips. "You're quiet all of a sudden. Why is that?" Mal asked calmly. "What the hell is wrong with him? Is it even possible for a person to change so much?" Lamont didn't know that Mal's new disposition stemmed from his most recent conversation with Nix and his transformation inside the gate. The reason Nix warned him not to enter that state too many times was because his body was literally becoming darkness. Cold, unfeeling, darkness. Entering that state just once had taken something from him, and he was no longer as polite or patient as before. The only reason why none of the girls had noticed anything different was because they were precious existences to him and he would treat them as such. But no one else in the world had the luxury of his kindness, as there simply wasn't enough to go around. Not anymore. Take it easy, Mal. You want to add another murder under your belt? Bad dump." Malachi froze when he heard the sound of a heartbeat coming from behind him. His expression immediately softened, and he dropped Lamont to the ground before turning around and finding Anna, her head peeking around the corner and a shocked expression on her face. "Lamont, go wait out front, I'll be right there." The Dark Angel rubbed his sore throat as he picked himself up off the ground. He wanted to tell Mal to hurry up as his boss wasn't exactly the kind of person who liked to be kept waiting, but, He was honestly terrified. His blessing from Papa Legba didn't come with any offensive benefits. Against someone like Mal, he was at a clear and sore disadvantage. I thought he would be easy to control, but now it doesn't seem like it. The lady will need to move things forward at a greater speed than anticipated. After Lamont left, Anna shakily came from behind the wall, the sound of her heartbeat echoing in both of their ears. Mal didn't know what to say, and he was afraid to make any sudden moves and risk terrifying her further. Anna. Did you really murder someone? Yes. Anna was not expecting him to give her such a straightforward and honest answer, and her anxiety over this situation only got worse. No, don't make that same mistake, Annalise. What happened? She asked shakily. Mal wasn't really expecting her to ask for details, and he inadvertently raised his eyebrows in surprise. I know you, or at least I think I do. I don't think you're the kind of person to just kill someone for no reason, so I want to hear your side of the story. Anna explained. Ever since Anna met Mal, she had judged him based on her own preconceived notions, and she had been wrong at every turn. So until she heard him say from his very own lips why he did it, she would not make any judgments. I have a sister. Mal began. He took a few minutes to explain everything that Aubrey had went through, in as little detail as possible so as not to darken the conversation beyond what was necessary. He told her about the day where Aubrey was hurt, and even about the time where Rowan showed up at Say's restaurant with the goal of hiring him as a hitman. In the end, he told her about how he freed Arthur from a maximum security penitentiary, just to rip him apart with his teeth in a national forest on the other side of the country. When Mal was done explaining, Anna remained motionless for a few seconds, and he thought that he might have broken her. Should I have not told her the full story? Would it have been better to gloss over some of the more gory details? Suddenly, a horrible thought crossed his mind. Is she afraid of oh thank God. Anna suddenly squatted down on the ground as she tried to calm the nauseous feeling in her stomach. Malachi felt like his brain had endured a hard reset. NOVLB //JNN. What? I know I said that I wouldn't judge you, B, but I honestly thought that you were about to tell me you killed some rude Karen or maybe a homeless guy, but it was just some lowlife rapist. K? I'm really relieved and I'm sorry, but I guess I was kind of expecting something to be wrong with you. I mean, so far you've seemed like my dream guy, but something like that can't be realistic, right? Huh? But I guess it is because not only are you super kind, generous, and sexy, but you're also really protective over your family, and that's really attractive too, and I kind of. By now, Anna had realized that she had been rambling away like a maniac and her cheeks quickly turned red with embarrassment. Don't look up, don't look up, don't look up. Despite her inner monologue, she couldn't help but glance up from the ground to check on Mal's expression, and she immediately wished that she hadn't. Malachi was standing in his same position as before, with his hands in his pockets and wearing an amused smile on his face. Go on, I'm listening. Shut up. She's so cute. Malachi couldn't help like he was discovering more and more sides to Annalise with every interaction. Anyway. Who was that weird guy you were with and what was this boss you're supposed to be meeting? Mal suddenly lost his smile as he ran his fingers through his dreads. He's with the Dark Angels, they found out I killed Arthur and now they are making me work for them. Anna's face went from being red with embarrassment to red with anger. What? They can't do that, it's blackmail. Who gives a shit if you turn some creep into chicken fingers? It was more like tartar. Whatever, smartass. My point remains the same. Anna said as she rolled her eyes. Malachi suddenly squatted down so that he was eye level with Anna. Why, you must really like me, huh? Why else would you be this upset on my behalf? Don't make me go get my bat. Ha ha ha. Malachi suddenly stood up and began walking towards the street while waving Anna goodbye. I gotta go, but I'll see you tomorrow, alright? I'm sorry our time got cut short today. It's cool, are you going to be okay with them? What do you want, Uncle Pete? 1819. Malachi smirked as if he already had some kind of plan in mind. You don't need to worry about me. I won't be with these assholes for long. He didn't elaborate, and she did not press him for answers. Annalise watched his back disappear around the corner, and once he was gone she finally let out an embarrassed sigh. What is wrong with me? Why did I tell him all of that stuff? She was usually a much more reserved and standoffish person, and she couldn't recall the last time she'd confessed to someone first. Come to think of it. I don't think I've ever dash. Ring. Anna's phone suddenly vibrated, and she fished it out of her back pocket. Once she saw the contact flashing across her phone, she knew that she was in for an even worse headache. What do you want, Uncle Pete? Immediately, the sound of her uncle's blaring voice nearly defeated her. AG, was that really Malachi Saint in my shop? Why didn't you tell me you knew him? Anna knew immediately that her uncle had been watching the store cameras again, and yet he didn't even bother to ask if she was okay from that asshole grabbing her earlier. But then again, if he called to ask her if she was okay every time she had to hit a handsy customer, his phone bill would suffer the consequences. You didn't exactly ask. Anna said. Who would think to ask something like that? Sigh. My mom has been at my house for all of 5 minutes, and she has already kidnapped my baby girl. She just walked right past me. I was here first, why is she suddenly trying to replace me? Malachi was currently in the back of a very nice limousine with blacked-out windows. He'd been riding for quite some time now, and he wasn't completely sure about just how much longer he had to go. His phone wasn't receiving any cell service, nor was it able to pinpoint his location on the map. He was completely and totally isolated. Sun's still out, once it goes down I should be able to get a better grasp of my surroundings. As soon as he had the thought, the car began to slow down. A few minutes later, he finally came rolling to a stop and the door was unlocked. Pushing open the door, Malachi was briefly blinded by the bright white lights coming from above. Once his vision adjusted, he could see that he was in a hangar surrounded by military vehicles that looked like they were straight out of a sci-fi movie. Armored trucks, tanks, and even a helicopter were all on standby, looking as if they were freshly polished. It's this way. Malachi glanced at Lamont and noticed that he was much less talkative than before. He wasn't sure if it was due to the fact that he'd almost lost his life earlier, or if he was just tired from the long drive. It was likely a healthy mix of both. Malachi followed carefully behind him while keeping an eye on his surroundings. The two of them entered into a high-speed express elevator, alerting Mal that he was in a very large structure. Lamont pressed the button for the highest floor, and it took a minute before they actually started moving. The boss is a no-nonsense kind of person, so whatever you do be sure to be polite. He warned. Malachi didn't say anything, and continued to have a bored and empty look on his face as if he wasn't at all interested by the fact that he was in a highly secure military base. Seriously, what has happened to you? Ding. The doors to the elevator finally came sliding open, and Mal strode through before Lamont did. Inside he found a luxurious penthouse office, with monitors lining every corner of the walls. Furniture was scarce, consisting of only a wooden desk with a computer on top and a small table lined neatly with alcohol. Sitting behind the desk was a proper-looking woman with black hair and full lips. She wore a dark black pantsuit with prim-looking glasses and a beauty mark beside her lip. Weird, she kinda looks like Dash. Malachi Saint? You're late. The woman said in a stern tone. Ain't like I knew about this beforehand. I had things to do. For some reason, the scowl on the woman's face only became worse and Lamont felt like he was going to pass out from fear. I am sorry, Director J. He's just been feeling a bit out of sorts today, and Dash. Fuck off, Lamont. Yes ma'am, right away. Lamont practically threw himself back into the elevator, and he felt like he couldn't press closed door fast enough. Once the two of them were alone, the director stood up and came from behind her desk. As the sound of clicking heels came closer and closer to Mal's ears, he began to feel a very unpleasant feeling spreading within his chest. Director Joanne stopped a few inches away from Mal's body and his stone-like expression finally broke as his face twisted up in disgust. What the hell is this? She smells horrible. Let it be known that Director Joanne bathed religiously and she never stepped out of her house without wearing the finest of perfumes. Even now, a random passerby would get a single sniff of her hair and find themselves captivated entirely by the scent of channel number 86. So whatever Mal was smelling, it was a scent only he could notice. But Director Joanne was not aware of such a thing, and Malachi's facial expression only caused her already sour mood to plummet. You have something you need to say, boy? Nah. Just back away from me. What was that? Joanne asked in a hushed tone. Instead of answering, Mal took a step back on his own and tried to prevent the unfortunate disaster of throwing up in this office. He didn't really care about first impressions anymore, but he still had to maintain some level of dignity. In all my life I have never. Joanne closed the distance between the two once again, and raised her hand to smack Malachi directly across the face. Because he was faster than she was, Mal easily caught her attack with one hand. But as soon as he made contact with her, his feeling of revulsion skyrocketed to new heights. He could feel something odd coursing through her body. It was strange and honestly quite alien in nature, and he was no longer quite sure how to describe it. Suddenly, he noticed a silver bracelet on her wrist in the shape of thorns. It seemed like they were embedded in her skin. Pow! Mal was only able to get a glance for half a second before a healed foot connected with his temple. The world immediately went dark and he felt himself beginning to lose consciousness, but he bit down on his tongue to prevent such a thing from happening. His vision returned just in time for him to see Joanne's heel coming towards his chest. Boom! Malachi flew like a kite with its strings cut, and his body slammed hard into the elevator doors. Damn, quite the business meeting. Mal muttered. You disrespectful brat, you don't seem to understand how things work here. You take orders from me, you do not speak unless you're spoken to, and you do not dash. You are making this a hell of a lot easier. Mal said. What did I just dash? Whoosh! Before Joanna could react, Malachi opened up his palm and a blast of golden fire sprang forth. Ever since he first smelled this woman, he could feel his instinct screaming out that action had to be taken. He thought maybe he was just becoming irrational and irritated because of the stench, so he held back until this point. But something about being yelled at like he was a 2-year-old made him lose all of his hesitation. Mal allowed his golden flames to run unrestrained, and they embraced the body of the director and swallowed her up. For some reason, neither herself nor the clothes on her body were being affected by the heat of his attack, but she still dropped to the ground while screaming and clutching her left wrist. Ahagagahai. Malachi hoped that this room was soundproof, or else he was about to have a lot of company in the next few minutes. Suddenly, the sound of something dripping onto the ground could be heard and Mal could see that this woman's silver bracelet had started to melt off. She also had begun to bleed some sort of dark silverish liquid from her eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. While this was undoubtedly a scary sight, Mal knew that this woman wasn't actually dying. Whatever unnatural thing that was within her body was simply being burned out, and this was merely the proof of that. After what felt like an eternity of screaming and burning, Joanne's eyes finally rolled into the back of her head and she fell forward, her head striking against the marble floors of her office. Malachi's flames disappeared a moment later, leaving him in this now quiet office with an unconscious woman a few feet away from him. Sniff, sniff. At least the smell's gone. Ugh. Director Joanne rubbed her head as she finally stirred awake. Her mind felt a bit foggy, but as she rubbed her temples a bit, she was able to recall everything that had happened before she went to sleep. That boy, he'd dash. Sorry for frying you right after we met. I'm usually more laid back than that. Exclamation point. Joanne stumbled upwards, looking for the source of the familiar voice. She found Mal floating in the corner a few feet away, with his legs crossed and his usual emotionless expression as he scrolled through all of the photos on his phone. Although if one looked close enough, a bit of light could be seen in his eyes, as he was currently only looking at photos he had with his friends. But given the fact that you kicked me, twice, figured we're even. He added. You did it. Joanne muttered. You freed me. Freed you? From what dash? Mal was suddenly alerted to the sound of sniffling coming from the woman on the ground, and he tucked his phone into his pocket as he floated above her. Easy now. Tell me what's wrong with dash. Boom. Suddenly, Joanne slammed her fist into the ground and cracked the floor. That bastard, how dare he violate me and manipulate me like this? He'll never see the light of day again. Mal finally placed both feet on the ground and kneeled in front of the raging woman. Still a lil clueless over here, miss. You wanna fill me in anytime soon? For the first time, Mal understood why Lamont was so afraid of his boss. The way Joanne was looking at him now, it was as if she was going to burn the whole world down at any second. That bastard Alex Heller. I will strip the flesh from his bones. I ain't get no good barbecue today, this fourth wasn't hitting on nothing FRFR. Feel like I missed out a lil bit. To be honest, Mal didn't really think much of Alex Heller. He'd seen him on TV a lot, and even bought his cereal a few times. Even when he'd met him in person when he first got blessed, he couldn't really find it in himself to make a judgment about him. But as he listened to this woman fight the urge to sob while she trembled with anger, he realized the man that he'd formerly thought nothing of was actually the kind of person he despised most. Joanne explained that she had gotten a tip about Alex about 2 years ago, and began closely investigating him and all of his movements. One night, she was tailing him at a cocktail party in D.C., when her body suddenly began to feel heavy and she passed out. When she woke up, she had that strange bracelet on her wrist and Alex Heller was by her side. Without understanding why, she was obeyed his every command. Divulging state secrets, covering up his crimes, and worst of all, playing house with them as if she were really his woman. The entire time her true consciousness was locked away behind a glass box, able to see and feel everything her body was going through without being able to do a thing about it. It was a miracle from the hires that she was still sane. "I'm sorry, that's awful," Malachi said sincerely. "Spare me your pity, it only drives the knife in deeper when some young brat like you is looking at me like I'm broken china." She finally picked herself up off the floor and began walking towards a wall on the other side of the room. "You aren't even supposed to be here, the two of us never should have even met." "What?" "Those of us who are blessed by archangels are classified as a non-threat by the government. If our heart ever becomes malicious or impure, then we immediately implode, making any kind of surveillance or incarceration unnecessary." As seen with Arthur, there was a small amount of leeway, but it wasn't enough to allow Malachi to suddenly go on a killing spree. His heart had to be in the right place whenever he acted, and his soul had to be redeemable if he ever sinned. If it wasn't, he would be incinerated by the very fire that he had been using so freely. In short, surveying Mal was a waste of taxpayer dollars. If he ever truly did something malicious, then he would die before anyone from the government could even get their hands on him. While Mal was still wrestling with the fact that he was walking around with a weakness that he knew nothing about, Joanne picked up an entire bottle of liquor and brought it to her lips. There was no way for her to get drunk, so Mal could only assume that she was drinking to feel something other than revulsion. "Then how are you still alive?" he asked. Joanne put down one empty bottle only to unscrew the lid off another. "Your listening skills need work. I told you that my body was overtaken, not my heart and mind. That is a world of difference, but I still could not use my powers for all of that time. I guess Cassiel installed a failsafe or something," she muttered. As Mal watched this woman put away alcohol at a speed that would have qualified her for an invitation to rehab, he silently began to put the pieces together. "You brought me in for Alex." "Why?" Gulping noises ensue. Continued gulping. "She needs this, so I'm going to give her a second." Malachi began floating in the air and crossed his legs like he was prepared to be patient. Joanne finally removed the bottle from her lips and wiped her mouth before picking up another one. "Because he hates your guts." "The hell for? I only met him once." "You rejected him in front of a large crowd in favor of a guild he considers to be less than his own and a woman who has denied his advances numerous times. That is enough." "Are you fucking with me?" Mal asked as he stared at Joanne with an expression of disbelief. There was no way this guy hated him over something this mind-numbingly idiotic. Were they in fucking middle school? Joanne laughed so hard that liquor nearly came out of her nose. "That's the problem with random people being blessed, kid. When the outcasts of society suddenly gain positions of power, most make it their life's mission to fuck over the entire world as revenge for however they were forced to live before they got their powers. It was the entire reason why the Dark Angels were founded. Despite what the blogs, and the cereal boxes, and TV interviews would have people believe, cases like Malachi were rare. Humans have a tendency to be driven by the memory of the darkest times in their life, and the motivation and lessons that they take from that time can vary from person to person. They can become bringers of change who want to make the world a better place despite the tragedies they've endured, or they can become vain conquerors who believe that the hires have finally rewarded them for all of their years of suffering. They view their lives from before as nothing more than a test and believe that their prize for passing is to crush the skulls of those who stepped on them when they were powerless. It all depends on the personality and the surroundings that they had before they were blessed. "There's more you don't know," Joanne said as he searched for more booze. "He tried to kill you on the day of your first gate. He blackmailed Sierra Calico into sneaking inside and killing all of the monsters the night before you entered and stole all of the drops. The scorpions you fought were just being controlled by her necromancy. And the boss had its powers enhanced by the use of dash." "Wait. Joanne glanced over her shoulder to find Malachi with his body engulfed in smoldering darkness and his orange eyes on the verge of turning red. What you just said, are you telling me the truth? Scary. Joanne thought humorously. I am. Are you upset he robbed you or that he tried to dash? Do you think I give a damn about some trinkets or my own life? Malachi's feet touched the ground, and he began walking towards Joanne like he was about to explode. My friends got hurt that day, and they could have died. I thought we were just unlucky, but now you're telling me that shit was rigged? I'll kill him. The monitors on the walls could no longer withstand Malachi's pressure, and they all cracked and became dim. The already dark room was now illuminated only by Mal's bright orange eyes that were as like a smoldering flame. Now I don't feel like I should tell him about his girlfriend's ex-husband. If he's this mad now, then he's likely to run off and get himself killed. Joanne made an executive decision to keep that last bit of information to herself for the time being. Your enthusiasm is admirable, but you cannot kill Alex Heller. Just because you are also blessed by a primordial doesn't mean that you're his match. He's had his powers for longer and is a great deal stronger than you. Even if you beat him in quantity, quality is what matters. Malachi was pissed, but he didn't let Director Joanne's words go over his head. He knew full well that the speed at which he mastered his powers was slower than others, because he had multiple areas to cover. Bast blessed him with two of her divinities, felines, and women's secrets, and he was sure that there had to be more to them than just the simple turning into cats and making women honest. There seemed to be a whole slew of things that his blessing from Michael could do. So far his golden flames could not only burn away anything but they could also cleanse souls, sense bodily impurities and bestow invulnerability. His blessing from Raijin had to come with more than simple lightning. How much could he increase the voltage? Could he summon thunderstorms? How far could he enhance his speed before his body was destroyed? NOV/L/B/JNN. And he didn't even want to think about his blessing from Nyx. He had barely even scratched the surface of everything that it was capable of. Her words certainly stung, but that didn't make them any less truthful. So what am I supposed to do? Sit on my hands like the pushover he thinks I am and allow him to live freely? You think I'll allow that bastard to be free after everything he has done to me? Crack. The empty bottle in Joanne's hands turned to dust in her grip as her body began to glow with a golden light. Behind her back, 4 large white wings appeared that seemed to chase away all of the darkness in the room. Let me make one thing clear. Your petty grudge with Alex Heller is absolutely nothing compared to the hate that I feel for him. You think you're mad? Do you have any idea what that man made me do? What he did to me? For over a year. Boom. The ground cracked beneath the feet of the two powerful blessed, and Mal realized that this woman was right. While they were both victims, his pain could not be compared to hers. The treatment they endured just had too large of a gap. He is going to sit in Tartarus for the rest of his life, no matter what I have to sacrifice to get him there. Joanne said sternly. Tartarus was the name for an underwater prison located in the Mariana Trench. It was a highly secure facility that housed nothing but blessed, and just like the Greek primordial it was named after, it was considered to be inescapable. Go home, Malachi. She ordered. You're a decent kid, so I hope that you'll listen to my sincere request and leave this to me. Mal fell into a silence as he stared into the face of the director of the Dark Angels, seemingly searching for any lingering weakness. What will you do? Nothing for now. I'll tell that bastard I have some work that's keeping me away from that palace of his for a while as I put together a strike force. Without that bastard Lamont noticing, of course. She muttered. Lamont was actually one of Alex's men, and his role was to act as Joanne's right hand while also reporting everything she did while out of his sight. Malachi backed away like he was going to leave, but not before he left Joanne with some parting words. I know that you want to handle him yourself and all, but I just wanted to let you know that when things go down, I'll be there. It'll be a highly covert operation, you will never know it's happening. Joanne said as she rolled her eyes. Malachi chuckled as his body began to sink into the shadows on the floor. Then I suppose the next time I see you, it'll be entirely coincidental. Once he disappeared, Joanne let out a deep sigh as she looked at the dark and empty room in front of her. Damn it. I forgot to thank him for helping me. Malachi emerged from the shadows in the alley behind Anna's workplace. Night appeared to have just fallen as the world still showed some traces of life, and there was still an energy in the air. Mal casually looked up into the dark sky and smiled as if he was appreciating fine art. You've outdone yourself again, mother. It's as beautiful as always. He stood there motionlessly for a minute to appreciate the scenery when he suddenly heard two voices coming from the street. How long do we have to sit out here like this, UNC? We look like we live in a trailer park. Who cares about that? You said he had to come back to get his car, right? We can wait for him until then. I'm supposed to be seeing him again tomorrow, so can't we just do this then? You're going to make me seem like some clingy stalker girl. Aren't you? You've texted him like 3 times over the past 6 hours. I just wanted to know if he was okay, alright? Malachi suddenly felt a buzzing in his pocket, and his phone was flooded with messages from multiple people. Damn, this feels kinda nice. Mal tucked his phone back into his pocket and followed the sound of the voices. Emerging in the street, he saw Annalise and an unknown man sitting in lawn chairs right in front of his car. They appeared to have been waiting for a long time, as there was a small table between them that was covered in playing cards. This is an odd little setup you got here. Anna's blood suddenly ran cold and she turned around to see Mal approaching from the alley, his hands in his pockets and wearing a small smile. Her face became slightly red with embarrassment and she wished that she could disappear. Mal, I swear this was not my idea. Malachi Saint? The man sitting opposite Anna suddenly bolted from his chair and appeared in front of Malachi with his hand outstretched and a charismatic smile on his face. Anna's uncle was a skinny man in his 40s, with long greasy black hair and neatly trimmed stubble around his mouth. Like Anna, his arms appeared to be covered in tattoos, and the quality varied between breathtakingly artistic and others that looked like they were done in a basement. He shared her bright purple eyes that were currently sitting behind a pair of circular glasses and sparkling with disbelief. I can't believe it's really you. I mean, Anna told me that the two of you were friends, but I honestly couldn't fathom why someone like you would be friends with my little AG. I mean, her personality is shit and she only dash. I cannot wait for you to become old and senile. I'm sticking you in the worst retirement home I can find. Anna growled. See what I mean? She's a little tyrant. Mal's emotions had been dulled to an extent, but even he found this man to be extremely likable and amusing. Anna's been pretty kind to me so far, or maybe I just haven't done anything that would make her grab her bat yet. Mal said as he shook his hand. You're heading in that direction. Anna said with her arms folded. Why were they picking on her? The two men promptly ignored her and continued their conversation like they hadn't heard anything strange. I am sorry, I know this must be strange, but I promise that I did not wait for you to ask for anything. I'm just a really big fan and I wanted to meet you. I'm Anna's Uncle Pete, but everyone just calls me PGN/O/vel/B/jn.C//JN.C//OM. The two men exchanged light-hearted pleasantries, but Anna was still giving Malachi a light-hearted scowl. Bastard, you had me worried for nothing. What is wrong with me? Anna rubbed her fingers through her short hair just in time to hear something absurd fly out of Malachi's mouth. Mal, I actually like her quite a bit. This project is really giving us a chance to get to know each other better. PG. Annalise? Gray? You're getting to know her. And you like what you've learned? Mel, ha ha ha. So far, yeah. PG, wow, okay then, I'll make you a deal. If you take a picture in my store for advertising, then I'll let her have the day off tomorrow and the two of you can go on a little date. Mel, deal. Wait a damn minute. Both men turned around and looked at Annalise like they had forgotten she was there. Yes? How are you guys going to sit here and barter over me like I'm the last wing on a tray? And what is this about a date? Don't worry kiddo, I'll pay you for the day. PG said as he waved away her concerns. Or do you not want to go on a date with me? Not gonna lie, that kinda hurts my feelings, you know? Mal playfully wiped away a tear and pretended like he was truly heartbroken. It's not that. Well it is, but dash. Aw damn, that's cold. PG muttered. I forgot how it felt to be rejected by pretty girls. Almost makes me feel normal again. Mal muttered as he stared up into the sky. Uncle Pete, can you just go inside for 1 second? Anna yelled with a red face. No? I'm kind of entertained by dash. Swear to God if you don't I'll tell the brunette at Foot Locker that you're plowing her sister. You kids have a good night. Pete picked up the lawn chairs and went back into the store in a hurry, but he still pressed his face up against the window to watch them with bated breath. Anna suddenly looked like she was very uncomfortable, and she began playing with the silver rings on her fingers to ease her nerves. "Mel. You already have a girlfriend," she said sadly. "And no doubt you'll have more, and I don't know if I can share you like that." Mel wasn't really expecting for the conversation to turn this way, but he realized that it was only natural. Even though it was legal now, there were still a lot of people who had issues with Blessed having multiple partners. After all, greed is instinctual to humanity, and such an emotion is usually only amplified when it comes to things that you love. Mel hesitantly reached out to take Anna's hand, and she flinched and pulled away as if she was scared to get closer to him. "Anna. I don't want you to think that I'm just some womanizer who wants to collect as many girls as I can. I only care about you, say, Bianca, and Luna. I don't have much experience with relationships, and the only one I've ever been in was a real shit show. But I will do my best to make sure that none of you girls ever feel left out or uncared for." "Mel, how can you possibly promise something like that?" This time, when Malachi reached for Anna's hand, she did not pull away. "Because if you girls are okay with me practically two-timing you, then something like this is the least I can do." Anna looked down at their hands that were interlocked and Wade felt a dangerously warm feeling spread. It was almost addictive, and she already felt like she was reaching the point of no return. "Mel, Muffled, just say yes." Malachi and Anna turned around to find Uncle Pete still in the window, desperately trying to ship these two together. Would they not make the cutest couple? He was seriously questioning Malachi's taste, but ultimately, he wanted his niece to be happy. He also wanted the influx of clientele that came from a Blessed endorsement, but that was besides the point. Malachi chuckled, while Anna's face turned beet red from embarrassment. She quickly released Mal's hand and reflexively stepped backward. I get it, so, just meet me tomorrow, and I guess we'll talk more then, without an audience," she said pointedly at PG. However, he seemed largely unbothered and simply shrugged his shoulders as if to say, "So? I'm an adult and I do what I want." Malachi seemed to recognize the fact that he was starting to convince her since he was not immediately rejected like before. "Tomorrow it is then," he said as he turned back to the store. "Where are you going?" "Your car is right here. I'm freeing up your schedule." Anna watched her uncle smile giddily as Mal walked back into the store and began taking pictures of him like he was some kind of model. "Seriously. I think something is wrong with that guy," she muttered. But despite her words, a smile of true happiness was on her lips. Malachi stepped out of the elevator to his apartment and headed towards his front door. For some reason, today felt longer than normal, and if he was honest, he was slightly tired. But based on the numerous text messages he'd received ever since earlier, he knew that he wouldn't get to sleep for a while. Opening the door to his apartment, he was assailed with the smell of Say's cooking and the Gap Band's Outstanding playing loudly on a speaker. "He's back. Brother. Damn brat, didn't anyone ever teach you how to respond to a text?" The sight of all of his favorite people in his apartment nearly brought a tear to his eye. For starters, Say and Luna were in the kitchen cooking together and seeming very close, with Surana a few feet away taking pictures. Aisha and Aubrey were hand in hand, with Bianca sitting on the couch alongside them. Old Man Rowan was standing in the corner next to both of Aisha's parents, and all three of them seemed to be drinking merrily. This is certainly a sight worth coming home to. Before Malachi knew it, 3 beautiful bullets hit him directly in the chest and nearly knocked him over. Aisha, Aubrey, and Surana had all bolted from their places and gave the young man returning home the biggest hugs they could muster. "Where have you been? We were all so worried about you." "I'm glad you're okay. Learn to respond to a text message, dickhead." "Hey Mel, I'm in your will, right? If you ever traumatize me by dying, I want to at least be compensated." Malachi rolled his eyes and only returned his sister's hug as she was the only one who seemed to know how to be nice. "Sorry girls, I had things to do." "Was one of those things my friend Anna?" Surana asked. "I heard that you were supposedly with her, but a man and a woman alone this late at night is ow. Malachi grabbed Surana by the ear and started pulling on it with the intent to put it in his pocket. "You're quite a nosy thing, aren't you? Didn't anybody ever teach you to stay out of grown folks' business? You're only a year older than me. Don't really make a difference," he said with a shrug. Aubrey suddenly freed Serana from her brother's grasp and gave him a semi-serious look. I heard that you saw Mama, or at least some monstrous version of her. Are you okay? Malachi glanced at Aisha and immediately knew she was the culprit. I couldn't hold it in, they made me spill. Aisha had been made to tell her family and girlfriend everything that she experienced inside of the dungeon from AZ. After she told them about the doppelganger Mrs. Saint and the harsh words she'd said to her, she also confided in them her worries and fears. And they all laughed in her face. Malachi and Aubrey's mother was the textbook definition of gentle, and the thought of her saying anything unkind to anyone was downright comical. I know that you must have been shaken up when she showed up like that, but you should know that whatever she said to you was dash. Malachi suddenly pulled his sister in for a hug that caught her completely off guard. You don't need to worry, sis. I won't let that thing taint her memory. Okay. I'm just making sure. Aubrey muttered. There was something about her brother that felt a bit different today. She wasn't sure what it was stemming from, but after a while she just attributed it to all of the sex he'd been having with Say. Maybe intercourse with an older woman was all it took to turn a boy into a man. n/o/vel/b/jn.c/om. Mel was finally released from the group of girls and he made his way over to his elders that he hadn't seen recently. UNC, Auntie. I see you met my grandfather. Trevor and Marianne glanced at the still drinking Rowan and suppressed smiles. We did indeed, and we're sorry for just showing up out of the blue, nephew. The large tattooed man quickly embraced Malachi with the handshake they'd been perfecting since he was little, followed immediately by a hug. Don't think anything of it, I should have invited you guys over as soon as I got the place, that's my bad. No sooner had Mal released his uncle than he felt an instinctive sense of danger coming from beside him. His aunt quickly snatched his ear as she did so often when he was a child, and he wasn't sure why it still hurt the same. He was probably just imagining it. That's right, you bad boy. Do you have any idea what it was like to see my nephew all over television, yet never hearing from him even once? You only call me when you want to ask for recipes. And when did you get a tattoo on your forehead? Your father is probably rolling around in his grave right now. Malachi stared at Rowan and Trevor with eyes that were pleading for help, and both men suddenly looked like they found something very interesting at the bottom of their bottles. Auntie, it wasn't like that. I guess I just got a bit caught up in everything and I forgot to hit you up. Humph. I know, you're probably busy with your beautiful girlfriend with huge breasts whom you never introduced us to. Am I right? Partially, but I mean, dash. Marianne suddenly released Mal's ear and instead wrapped her arms around him to give him a crushing hug. I'm just teasing you, Mel, but we were worried, you know. We thought you may have outgrown us. For the record, I never thought that. Trevor suddenly added from his seat against the wall. Honey, you're sleeping on the couch tonight. Yes, dear. Malachi chuckled as he returned his aunt's hug with one of his own. You guys should know that I could never outgrow you, you practically raised me. You will forever be my family. Marianne suddenly felt a lot better, and all of the anxieties she'd felt were fading away. As he said, Mel would always be her nephew, and no amount of time, money, or fame would change that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but may I borrow him for a moment? Luna had approached the group without a sound, and wearing her usual eye-catching smile. Marianne wasn't old enough to the point where she couldn't feel the chemistry between these two, so she let Mel go without a fuss and watched as they walked out onto the balcony. She found her place in her husband's lap, and let out a sigh of melancholy. He's all grown up now, she muttered. He grew up to be quite the fine young man, Trevor said thoughtfully. He won't be one for long. I was a man too, before I got married, Rowan suddenly said. Ha 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 ha. Rowan and Trevor shared a round of knee-slapping, out-of-breath laughter as if they had just heard the funniest joke on the planet. Tears fell from their eyes, and they very nearly spilled their drinks, and they shared a moment of true camaraderie. When they finally calmed down and wiped away their tears, they realized that the room had fallen into a complete silence at some point. Looking up, they found every woman in the apartment staring at them with ugly scowls. Rowan. Don't mind me, I'm off my meds. Trevor, I swear I was laughing at something else. Out on the balcony, Malachi and Luna were immersed in a beautiful dark night with a full moon overhead. Coming home to everyone I care about is nice, but I have to admit that you were the biggest surprise, Mel said with a smile. Yes, well, you distracted me so much this morning that I forgot why I came here in the first place. Luna suddenly held up a small golden ring with a dark black gem embedded inside of it. Mal pretended to be shocked with an Oscar-worthy performance, as he clutched his heart like he was overcome with shock. But my dear Luna, we haven't even kissed yet. But I guess if the time is right then. Why, you idiot! Luna yelled with a red face. This is one of your drops from the dungeon boss. I discussed it with the girls and they both refused to take anything since they felt they didn't contribute, so that leaves only you. Malachi finally ceased his act as he laughed and took the ring from her. Seriously, those girls are so stubborn. He carefully inspected the ring but still had no idea what it did. It's a storage ring. Luna explained. You can use it to dash. When she saw the excited glint in Malachi's eyes, she knew immediately that he did not require an explanation. Check inside, you have another prize waiting. How do I? Infuse a bit of your aura inside the ring, then you should be able to see inside of it, and take out what you want. Mal closed his eyes and did as instructed, and a moment later a large silver briefcase appeared in his hand. Opening it up, Mal found a pair of weapons inside, and he felt like a kid on Christmas. Twin Ikalwa with dark black blades and hilts wrapped in matching dark leather. The blades themselves were around 14 inches in length while the hilt was closer to 20, and despite being a bit heavy, to Mal they were relatively light. The blades themselves were inscribed with glowing purple runes, signaling that these weapons possessed a special ability. We tested them and found out they have a corrosive effect. Anything that you stab will start to deteriorate and rot at an alarming speed. Luna explained. That's cold, and maybe a bit gross. Mal decided not to use these when he'd eaten anything prior. Thank you for the gifts, love. But I don't think I'm going to need this one. Mal said as he held up the ring. Luna blinked several times as she looked at Mal like he was throwing away literal gold. Are you serious? Mal chuckled and pointed down at their feet. The shadows had become concentrated, and Mal placed the briefcase containing his weapons onto the ground. The briefcase was swallowed up by the darkness, and soon it disappeared without a trace. You're amazing, you just keep surprising me. Luna said with a helpless smile. Hell, I surprised myself that time. I had only theorized that before now. This would make his day-to-day life a lot easier. He couldn't wait to go back inside and put his suit and mask inside too, not to mention his daggers. It was going to be really nice not to worry about wearing that ugly belt everywhere. Mal suddenly took Luna's hand and slipped the ring onto her finger. You should hold on to this for me. I think it'll look better on your hands than mine. With her slender, pale fingers and dark pink nails, the addition of the intricate golden ring indeed suited her perfectly. You see? I was right on the dash. Before Malachi could finish, Luna grabbed him by his face and pulled him down, forcing their lips together. At first, Mal's eyes betrayed his surprise, but the feeling of Luna's gentle and plump lips on his own caused his brain to short-circuit. His hands quickly found their way around her waist and he pulled her body deeper into his own, and the two of them became lost in their first kiss under the moonlight. Mal was admittedly very reluctant to let Luna go. Her figure was a bit more slender than Say's, but she was somehow just as soft. Luna had grown tired of Mal taking the lead in their relationship, despite being younger, so she was actually being quite sensual and aggressive. Her hands lightly caressed his face as she sucked and bit his lips with fervor, earning a shiver with every action. Eventually, Mal's mind shut off and he allowed his body's instincts to take over. His hands dropped from her waist and traveled all the way to her plump bottom, prompting him to give her a firm squeeze. Luna moaned lightly into Malachi's mouth, and her soft feminine voice only served to send his body further into heat. Much to his dismay, she broke their kiss first and rested her head against his chest, her breathing ragged and heavy. Malachi was still a bit riled up, and he placed his lips at various spots along her smooth porcelain neck, earning more stifled moans. Is our entire relationship going to be like this? She asked shakily. Like what? You just say and do things that make me want to throw myself at you, as if I'm some young girl with no control. Malachi smiled as he lightly bit Luna's neck with his pointed teeth. That's how a relationship is supposed to be, no? I don't know, it's been so long for me that I don't have any idea what I'm doing anymore. Malachi suddenly froze from his deviant-like activities and instead pulled Luna in for a hug. It's not like I'm an expert either, I'm still learning new things with Say every day. We can all figure this out together. I'm not against that, please take care of both of us. Of course. Mal lifted Luna by the chin and kissed her much gentler than before, and the entire world seemed to fade away around them. He didn't ask why Luna was so averse to relationships, or what she had gone through in her past, as he just assumed that she would tell him when the time was right. Click. Suddenly, the door to the apartment opened and Sei poked her head outside cutely. I am sorry, I may have been spying a little bit and gotten slightly jealous. Can I have a kiss too? Malachi chuckled and beckoned his girlfriend closer, and soon he was embracing both mature beauties in his arms. Luna seemed to have developed quite the jealous streak already, since every time that he kissed Sei, she would demand one in return. Of course Sei did the same thing, leading to Mal being trapped in this never-ending cycle, the likes of which he had no real desire to escape from. But after a while, it did start to become uncomfortable. Girls, I'd love to keep doing this all night, but I'm sure dinner is ready. It's not. Sei said as she demanded another kiss. Truthfully, Mal was just using dinner as an excuse. Blue balls wasn't really a fun thing to experience, and having Luna and Sei consistently rub against it was only making things worse. In a few more minutes, he was either going to turn his pants into a Jackson Pollock painting or kick everyone in his apartment out for the night. His mind was coming dangerously close to the latter. Suddenly, the door opened once again and Bianca stepped out, but she looked a little different from usual. She normally wore very revealing clothes and let her hair flow freely down her back, but now she had on a black anime t-shirt and a matching dark sweater with shorts and high-top skate shoes. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, and she wore a pair of cute yet nerdy glasses on her beautiful face. Hey guys, dinner is, Kaya. Sorry. She prepared to turn around and head back into the house, when Mal stopped her at the last moment. Wait, B. It's alright. Kinda feels like I'm seeing something private though, in more ways than one. Bianca glanced down at the large bulge in Mal's sweatpants, and she felt like she was going to faint. Luna and Sei both pulled away from Mal and he took that moment to sit down while crossing his legs. I'll be inside in a minute, you guys can just start without me. He said as he scratched his head. Okay, honey. Alright, don't keep us waiting. Sei and Luna stepped back inside of the house, leaving Bianca standing awkwardly in the doorframe. You look different. Mal suddenly said. No 3 words could have caused Bianca's heart to drop more than those. Why? I don't usually dress like this, but I was feeling a bit lazy today, and I decided to throw on whatever so. I like it. I know my outfit is cheeks but wait, huh? Bianca's brain suddenly felt like it had taken a hard reset, and she nearly lost all strength in her legs. Somehow, you look a lot happier like this. Malachi said with a smile. You were always beautiful, but I think I prefer this look more. Besides, I love food wars. Bianca's weeb switch had finally been flipped and she appeared in front of Mal with a blinding glint in her eyes. Oh really? Who's your favorite character? Probably Joichiro. He should have had his own show. By now, Bianca's heart had begun beat dangerously fast. There is little more exciting to a lover of anime than the moment that you realize you've met someone who likes your favorite show just as much as you do. She had gotten so excited that her temperature had begun to flare up and her glasses became foggy. You're right. I really wanted to see him. Bianca and Mal spent much longer talking about anime than they'd expected. Her natural enthusiasm over the topic ended up getting him pretty fired up as well, and soon they were embroiled in full-blown debates that only they and Aisha could understand. They confused the hell out of everyone at dinner, but they were so happy watching them that they didn't really open their mouths to complain. This is perfect. Mal thought happily. I wish things like this would last forever. Right now, nothing could ruin his mood or dull his happiness. The next morning, Luna was staring at Mal, who was lying on the floor of the training room, breathing heavily and covered in sweat. What happened? She asked. Rowan was standing next to her, wearing an I told you so look on his face. For some reason, the kid's in a real rush today. Ever since he came in, he's been pushing his blessings past their limit, especially Nyx's, stupid brat. I can hear you, old man. Mal said between labored breaths. Good. Luna blinked her eyes several times as she tried to get the image of Mal's shirtless and sweaty body out of her mind. Focus, focus. After sharing that kiss with him last night, she couldn't get odd thoughts out of her mind, and it was beginning to affect her work. She was eating a sausage at breakfast earlier and nearly gagged on it out of instinct. Your face is red, Boss Luna. Are you warm in here? Rowan asked. And no. She said as she shook her head in embarrassment. She finally turned her focus back to the young man lying on the floor and was able to maintain some degree of professionalism. What's going on with you, darling? It's not like you to be impatient like this. It was nauseating over dinner last night, but I think it might be even worse now. Rowan rolled his eyes as he made a silent vow to finally get on a dating site and find his own happiness again. Mal looked up at both of them and flashed a helpless smile. I have 2 beautiful girlfriends and a mouthy old grandfather. If I don't get stronger, how am I supposed to protect you? N/O/vel/b//n.c//om. Not buying it, huh? No. Damn. Malachi sat up on the ground after taking another deep breath. Love, would you mind cutting the cameras in here for a moment? Luna was surprised by his sudden request, but typed away on her wristwatch nonetheless. Once the cameras were deactivated, Mal sighed deeply before he realized that he had no idea where to begin. I guess I should start with how Grandpa Rowan and I met. He muttered. For 20 minutes, he retold the entire timeline of events that led to him being contacted by the Dark Angels and eventually how he traveled to their headquarters yesterday. He told them about his shady meeting with Joanne and how he'd sensed something strange coming from her body, as well as how they fought. When he got to the part about how it was revealed that she was being controlled by Alex Heller, Luna and Rowan were even more shocked than before. She'll be moving on him soon, probably within the next few days. I have to get as strong as I can to close the gap between us before then. Darling, you don't have to do something dangerous like that. Luna said. Let the Dark Angels take care of it, it's literally what they were created for. Luna. For the first time, Luna saw Mal with a very serious look on his face, and she knew that he was not joking about this. He tried to hurt Nina and Opal, and he stole from the guild. Your guild. Why would I let something like that go? Luna's heart was suddenly filled with a wave of complex emotions. The knowledge that Malachi had killed someone didn't bother her nearly as much as the idea of him putting himself in harm's way for her. Primordial blessed are special existences, and a proper comparison between them and regular blessed is very difficult to draw. The closest one would be watching a professional MMA fighter go toe-to-toe with a toddler. But Malachi's powers weren't nearly at the level where he could contend with Alex yet. The Master of True Sky would probably kill him with the same amount of energy that it would take to tie his shoes. Kid. I am so sorry. Rowan dropped his head as low as it would go, and it seemed like the old man was on the verge of tears. I've gotten you into so much trouble. I should have been satisfied enough that such a monster was locked behind bars, but Rowan didn't finish his sentence, but Malachi hardly needed him to. You didn't make me do anything, old man. I wanted that guy to disappear just as badly as you did. Besides, you don't have anything to do with Alex hating me. As Malachi consoled his grandfather, Luna was still lost in thought, chewing on her nail. She was pissed at Alex Heller too, but she knew full well that she couldn't do anything about it. Besides, she was more worried about Malachi and his single-minded desire to take revenge on her behalf. It feels good to have him this upset over me, but I can't let him run into this blindly. Her mind made up, she reached into her back pocket and pulled out her cell phone. Malachi didn't understand why, but after he finished training, Luna told him to go in her office and wait. Luna had her own private bathroom in her office as well, so he took a moment to wash up while he waited for her to return. Exiting the shower, he found that she still had yet to arrive, but there was now a large white fox sitting on the couch. Malachi clutched the towel around his neck and started to approach Luna's magical beast. Shiro didn't appear to be hostile in the slightest, even though these creatures supposedly abhorred everyone except for their partners. But one could clearly tell by looking into the fox's curious eyes that this wasn't the case with him. You've grown since I've last seen you. Mal said. Suddenly, Shiro shrank back down to her usual travel size and gave Mal a look like she demanded praise. He let out an impressed whistle as he lightly pet the furry creature. Aren't you special? I hope when my little guy hatches he'll be as interesting as you. Arf. Doubt it. Malachi naturally could not understand the creature, so he just assumed that it was wishing him good luck. Taking a seat on the couch, He waited patiently in Luna's office as he petted the small fox that had moved into his lap. The welcoming scent of his girlfriend's office and the softness of Shiro's fur was like concentrated NyQuil, and soon he was sleeping peacefully without any real care in the world. He wasn't sure how long he was out for, but he awoke to the feeling of a familiar pair of lips being pressed against his own. Opening his eyes, he found Luna with her face above his, a subtle yet noticeable smile on her face. "Good morning, sleeping beauty. Shouldn't that be the other way around, love?" "It should, but I'm not the one who was sleeping just now, was I?" Luna removed her pet from Malachi's lap and took her rightful seat with extreme jealousy. "Arf? No kiss for me?" Luna merely rolled her eyes at her pet and pulled out a treat from her robe, appeasing the small animal. She comfortably leaned back into Malachi's chest and he slipped his arms around her waist, locking her in place. "Did you call me up here just for this, love? You could have just met me at home, you know? This is certainly nice, but it isn't what I called you for, beloved. You haven't told Say about everything with the Dark Angels yet, have you?" Mal regrettably shook his head, and Luna began to delicately trace over his interlocked fingers. "I know I'm the last one who should be saying things like this given that there's still so much I haven't told you, but you shouldn't keep secrets from us. I know that you think you'll worry us, and some part of that may be true, but part of being in a relationship with someone is letting them know when important things happen, right?" The last part of Luna's speech seemed like a genuine question, as if she still wasn't completely sure what was normal. "You're right. I promise I won't keep anything from either of you, and I hope you'll do the same." "Of course, darling." Mal left another trail of kisses down Luna's neck, and it seemed like the mood was going to heat up once again. Unfortunately, there was a sudden knock at the door to Luna's office, and a man entered whom both of them knew very well. "I see things have developed quite well between you. I can come back if you need a moment." Malachi smiled when he saw his idol, Morgan Creed, suddenly stride into the room wearing his usual immaculate dark suit. "Nah, we were just spending a little time together is all." Even though Luna had just been caught red-handed in a compromising position, she didn't show her embarrassment on her face. She was still getting used to regular affection, so public displays of it were still a big leap of faith for her. But ultimately, she had already prepared herself for this much after hearing from Say how affectionate Malachi could be. She was also getting more comfortable with not wearing underwear, since she had been told that Malachi was a anywhere at any time kind of person. "Ahem, just in time, Morgan," Luna said as she lightly fanned her pink cheeks. "Please, sit down." At this moment, Malachi finally realized it was incredibly strange for the Guildmaster of Ragnarok to show up at Immortal Moon, and he wondered just what could have brought him here. "It's not like you to contact me, Luna. To what do I owe the honor? I need you to teach Mal how to better use his blessing from Nyx." "Wait, huh?" Both men looked at Luna like they could not believe the words coming out of her pretty lips, and the mature beauty sighed in exhaustion. "He's been a bit adamant in rushing his growth lately, and I'm worried he's going to hit a wall or worse, hurt himself with such power. You are the only one I trust to teach him." The reality was that there was no way for Malachi to learn enough to kill Alex within the projected timeframe. But if he learned from the only other person in the world who was on Alex's same level, he might be able to gain enough tricks to survive the confrontation. And Luna was desperately hoping that would be enough for him to put this grudge of his to bed. Morgan looked at Malachi and saw that while he did not appear to be expecting this, he was not averse to this situation either. His eyes contained a desperation to learn that was scarcely seen in younger people these days. "You understand how the tabloids will react to this, yes? They will accuse him of being disloyal, treacherous, and make it seem like he's trying to jump ship. Fuck em. You two are remarkably in sync. How long have you been official again?" "Since last night." Morgan didn't realize that Mal and Luna's compatibility was only natural. He was the boy blessed by night, and she by the goddess of the moon. They each served to complement the other, and when they were together like this, they were practically one and the same. Morgan sighed as he ran his hands through his fiery red hair. "I don't mind doing this, but I need to know two things." "And those are?" Luna asked, already feeling an incoming headache. "What's in it for me for starters? I'll give you 3 tickets to the gala we're hosting next month." "Eh?" Morgan made a wobbly gesture with his hand as if such a proposal wasn't quite good enough. "I'll let you cater." "Deal. But the menu must be tasteful. If I see so much as a single hamburger at my event, I'll go to your house and destroy your precious grill." Fine, fine. I'll make it upscale, I promise. And don't wear that stupid apron from last time either. Alright, I won't. Morgan said. Luna didn't know that he had a whole slew of aprons with phrases. The one he was planning on wearing to her event was a black one that said, "Don't need no teeth to eat my beef." But she would only find out about that when it was far too late. What's the second thing? Malachi asked. Morgan suddenly became much more serious, and looked at Malachi with a serious expression. I need to know that you won't quit, Malachi. Handling primordial powers is quite different from the way that you learn to utilize others. I won't sugarcoat it, this will be hell. If you back down from this now, I will not see you any differently, and you may still learn to master your powers at a much slower rate. Malachi could feel the genuine concern coming from the voice of the man he once idolized, and he had to admit, he was really touched. I can't afford to quit, man. There is no need for you to hold back on my account. Morgan nodded and finally stood up from his seat. I have a couple of things to prepare beforehand, you'll have some free time until then. I'll pick you up from your place at around 6. Make sure you have a bag packed. All right. When Morgan opened the door, he found a young girl with caramel skin, blonde hair, and glasses waiting outside. Bianca? Did you need something? Luna asked. I'm sorry, I wasn't eavesdropping on purpose, but I also want to receive training from Mr. Creed. After that last dungeon nightmare, she never wanted to feel that weak and helpless again. She was actually coming up here to ask Luna for private lessons, but this would no doubt be even better. Surely the one blessed by the primordial of fire could teach her a thing or two about her own abilities, even if she lacked his raw power. Morgan glanced back at Luna like he was waiting for some kind of permission, and received a nod in response. All right. Morgan muttered as he scratched the back of his head. Then you can also meet me at Malachi's apartment at 6 tonight. Pack a bag with a few days' worth of clothes. Oh, okay. Bianca was trying hard to contain her excitement, but her inner anime lover was making that rather difficult. My own training arc. Kya. This'll be so cool. Morgan exited the office not long after, leaving the three of them inside. So, darling? Luna asked. What will you do until 6? Malachi smiled harmlessly at the sight of a cold woman like Luna acting like a maiden in love. I'm supposed to be meeting Anna today, she's my project partner. Both Luna and Bianca suddenly twitched as if they heard something they didn't quite like. This girl Anna. Do you like her? Luna asked dangerously. Malachi didn't seem to be intimidated by Luna's jealous and possessive nature, and even found her to be even more beautiful. I don't know, but I am attracted to her and I think that I would like to move things further in the future, but, are you alright with that? Malachi was not an inconsiderate man who would continue to add women around him at the expense of the ones that he already had. He had already given himself to Luna and Say, just as they had given themselves to him. They had just as much say in him taking new partners as he did. NOVLB //JNN. I'm not sure. Luna said honestly. Tell me about her and I'll make up my mind then. Malachi knocked on the door of an apartment on the east side of town. His heart was beating unusually fast for some reason, and he merely attributed that to the conversation he'd had with Luna an hour prior. She listened intently to everything that Mal had to say about Anna, and while she was a bit peeved to hear him speak so highly of another woman, she had to admit that Anna did sound lovely. Initially, she was a bit worried when she heard that Anna was human and a regular college student, as she was slightly worried about him being taken advantage of. It wouldn't be an unheard of story after all, as things like that have always occurred in relationships where people were in different economical standings. For some, it was instinctual to want to climb up from their humble beginnings on the back of another. But Luna would only allow Mal to be with women who cared about him genuinely, and whose love was no less pure than her own. After hearing about Anna for 5 minutes, Luna had given her approval for Mal to pursue her, with the conditions that he wasn't allowed to have sex with her before they had their first time together. And that she would take back her approval if she ever found Anna to have impure intentions. Mal considered both of those things to be fair, and as a result he did not pose any objections. When the door opened, Mal was greeted by the sound of blaring R&B music, and the sight of Anna in an outfit that was nearly enough to give him a nosebleed. A simple dark black sports bra, a pair of cotton sweatpants that appeared to be dreamily soft, and splotches of what appeared to be paint on her beautiful face. Why were you looking at me like that? she asked shyly. Come inside, you're drawing too much attention. Mal glanced behind him and found a small crowd of older women a fair distance away, looking like they were about to risk it all and try their luck. But Mal wasn't moved in the slightest by the attention, and even felt a bit annoyed by it. Come on. Anna grabbed Mal by the wrist and pulled him into her apartment before closing the door. Anna's apartment was just as one would have expected, filled with black furniture and art and posters of famous bands and musicians. In the middle of the living room, there was an easel with a canvas that looked to be half completed. What's this, Dash? None of your business, so don't look. Before Malachi could actually get a good look at the art on the canvas, Annalise leapt on top of his back and covered his eyes with her hands. But I was interested. The small part that I was able to see looked really good. You're just saying that. You should know by now that I never say anything that I don't mean. Especially not to you. Annalise fell into another red-faced silence as she slid down from Mal's back. Then, you better not make fun of it or I'll bash your balls. Noted. Now that Malachi's eyes were free, he could see that Annalise's picture was that of an eerily familiar man. It was still just an outline, but he could clearly see that this was supposed to be a man with long dreads and cat-like eyes. This is me, right? Almost. Anna said shyly. She was already embarrassed beyond belief since she had started painting him without even realizing it, but now he'd actually seen it too. Mentally, she had already begun to make plans to curl up in a hole and die. Don't you want to leave or something? I'll go change and then we can dash. Actually, do you want to do this as a date instead? He asked. What do you mean? Malachi suddenly held up the canvas and smiled like he was looking in the mirror. I mean, I've always wanted to learn how to paint and you don't really strike me as the kind of person who likes to go out, so we can just stay here. You can teach me everything you know, and I'll order us some food. Cool? Judging by the sparkles in Anna's eyes, she was way more than okay with such a thing. She liked staying home more than anything else anyway, and she wouldn't actually go out if there weren't instances where it was demanded. Why yeah, that would be great. Got an extra easel? Mal asked. Yeah, 1 second. Anna suddenly ran to the back of her apartment to grab some extra art supplies for her date. While Mal was up front, still admiring Anna's art, he suddenly felt a pair of eyes on his back. Turning around, he found a small chocolate-brown cat with dark eyes staring up at him curiously. I'm seeing so many cute animals today. What's your name, little dude? Meow. Piss off, fuckboy. Annalise doesn't need any more no-good men in her life. Why can I understand you? Meow? Wait, you can understand me? Both the human boy and the cat were staring at each other with clear surprise. I'm back. Annalise returned carrying an extra easel and smock for Mal, and she seemed to be uncharacteristically happy. He was so caught off guard by her radiant and angelic smile that he forgot entirely about the fact that he was just speaking to a cat a few seconds ago. It's always amazing to me that she's not a blessed, she is so unfairly beautiful. Meow. 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 Stop ogling her, motherfucker. You think I can't smell all those other bitches on you? You ain't shit. I know you hear me. Oh? I see you met Marceline. Anna said happily. She usually doesn't like strangers, but seeing as how there aren't any scratches on you yet, you must be the exception. Actually, I'm not. She called me a fuckboy. Mal said honestly. Anna giggled and began setting up an art station for Mal to paint on when she suddenly froze and looked at him like he'd grown a second head. Wait, is this a blessed thing? Or were you just making one of those sarcastic jokes like you always do? Nah, not this time. I think this is another part of my blessing from Dash. Mal didn't even get to finish his sentence before Annalise picked up the small brown cat and ran down the hallway. She tossed the furry animal into her bedroom and immediately shut the door behind her. If Malachi could talk to cats, she absolutely had to keep them apart. Marceline had seen far too much from living with her all this time. Whether it was the egregious number of times she had gotten drunk alone and cried, her terrible relationship with her ex, or even the fact that she traditionally walked around naked at home, she absolutely had to keep all of them a secret. So, are you ready to start? She asked as if nothing had happened. Cute. Malachi and Anna were lying side by side on the floor of her apartment, with both of them holding each other's completed canvases above their heads. I'm jealous, the me you painted is way better looking," Malachi said. Annalisa's completed portrait of him was nothing less than touching. Every brushstroke was performed meticulously and with the utmost precision while also retaining a sense of fluidity in her movement. The drawing itself showed a great deal of care for the subject material, as every line and detail that was present on Mal's face was also on the canvas. It was a true masterclass, almost indistinguishable from reality. "Compared to yours, mine is." Mal looked beside him at Annalise and his heart nearly stopped beating. Small tears were running down the face of the beautiful young woman, as she looked at herself in a way that she had never been depicted before. n/o/vel/b/jn.c/om. In Mal's painting, she was standing in a meadow wearing a white dress, and she looked like some kind of angelic goddess of fertility. Her tattoos, though hastily drawn, were still present, and added a sense of identity to the piece. Malachi's painting wasn't nearly as well done as Anna's, but it was every bit as heartfelt. "What the hell, this is amazing." "So you're not crying because it's insulting?" Malachi asked hesitantly. "Ha ha ha. Of course not." In a surprising turn of events, Anna placed the portrait to the side and rolled over to give Malachi a hug. No matter how many times Mal was embraced by a beautiful woman, he didn't believe that he'd ever quite get used to it. His heart began to thump wildly in his chest as he slipped his arms around her. "What's this for?" "I don't know, just shut up." "That's kind of hard for me, I think I might need your help with that." "Should I punch dash?" Mal suddenly tilted Anna's face upwards and kissed her gently. Initially, the young girl felt her eyes widen in surprise. They discussed musical interests, dreams for the future, and even painful backstories. 2032. Anna was initially embarrassed to tell him that she had never even met her parents and been raised by her uncle her whole life, but somehow the more she talked the more comfortable she became. She started to pull away, but at the last moment she recalled the last 3 hours they'd spent together. In addition to painting, they'd spent time opening up and getting to know each other on a deeper level. They discussed musical interests, dreams for the future, and even painful backstories. Anna was initially embarrassed to tell him that she had never even met her parents and been raised by her uncle her whole life, but somehow the more she talked the more comfortable she became. She hadn't felt this comfortable with someone since, actually, she hadn't ever felt this comfortable with someone. The more she learned about Malachi, the more she knew that she wanted to be with him and vice versa. Her resistances melted, Anna returned Malachi's kiss instead of rejecting it, and the two of them spent a great deal of time on the floor, each of them unwilling to pull away first. Outside Anna's apartment, there was a man whom Anna would recognize rather easily. He had long dark hair, and deathly pale skin like he hadn't ever seen proper sunlight. In his hand, he was carrying a bag filled with food and he wore a confused look on his face. "I knew this was her address, but it's not her name on the order. Did she move or something?" The young man pressed his ear up to the door, and he could hear Erykah Badu playing loudly on the speakers, Anna's favorite music to listen to while painting. "She is still here, then does that mean?" The man began to formulate conclusions within his mind, and soon his face turned ugly as he realized that there had to be a man inside. Raising his hand, he struck the door hard like he was trying to tear it down. Bang! 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 "I have a secret that I have never told anyone until now. I listen to Doja Cat religiously. I'm sorry. I can't bump ESTG and Beartooth every day. Doja can sing and she fine, so shit really hits different, bro. Thank you for allowing me to get this off my chest." Bang! 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 Malachi and Anna were so busy kissing, they barely noticed the sound of her door being beaten on. Besides, with how loud the music currently was, they couldn't exactly be sure if it was the beat or not. But when the song began to die down, the two of them could finally hear the alarming banging coming from the front door. "I'll get it," Anna muttered, her face still red from the kiss. Mal wanted to get up, but his body was still showing signs of the mind-altering first kiss they'd just had, and he didn't think it'd be wise of him to answer the door like that. And as he watched Anna wobbly climb to her feet, he knew that she hadn't exactly gotten off easy either. Nice to know that I ain't the only one who enjoyed it. He could still remember the fullness of Anna's lips and the playfully mischievous way she used her tongue. "You bitch. What the hell took you so long to answer, huh? Who the fuck do you got in there? What the fuck are you doing here, Nick? Piss off before I call the Kaya." All Malachi heard was arguing, followed by the sound of Anna screaming, and his heart plummeted to his shoes. Sprinting to the door, he found Anna swinging wildly at some lanky pale bastard, but his hands were already around her neck. After seeing that sight, Mal couldn't really say what happened. All that he could recall was that he wanted so desperately for this man to stop breathing, when he was assailed with two strange sensations. A twinge of pain in his heart, and a feeling of something cracking within his mind. A flash of blinding white light burst from Malachi's forehead, and a horrifying creature like nothing he had ever seen shot out of his body. Before Anna realized it, she was in Malachi's arms, and the man who had been assaulting her a mere moment ago was now being held up in the air by some kind of monster. "Anna, are you all right?" I am fine, Mal, but, what is that thing?" It looked like a demon from the lowest level of hell, and an alien creature got a hotel room for the night, and this was the result. The monster had the lower half of some kind of octopus or squid-like creature, with pinkish-gray skin that was reminiscent of a hippo. 2034. Judging by its upper body, the creature was female, as it had two small pronouncements where breasts would be, but no nipples or any kind of obscene-looking flesh. Its arms were long and frail-looking, but there were massive black claws jutting out from its 4 fingers, and they were currently digging into the shoulders of the crying intruder. Right above its arms, it had a second pair of appendages that were more like bladed scythes for cutting and shearing flesh. Down its back were 6 large, pointed spines, divided into 2 rows, and they easily pierced the ceiling. Its face was a bulbous gray surface, with no eyes or ears, but its mouth was like that of a praying mantis. What the hell is this thing? Please God, get it away from me!" Nick cried. Malachi thought that maybe his contracted beast would end up being some kind of bird, or mythical creature. Hell, if he was really lucky, he thought he may even get a dragon. But surprisingly, what he received was nothing like that. It was infinitely more special and frightening. Somehow, the words of the god of lightning, Raijin, began to play within his mind once again. Do not grow complacent for even a single second, for there are worse things than those that lie in the gates. He always wondered what kind of worse things could have had the gods so paranoid, and now he knew. But he absolutely never expected to meet one of those creatures like this. Wait. The creature seemingly recognized Malachi's voice, and it turned its attention from the prey in its grasp towards its master, seemingly waiting for further instruction. Malachi gently brushed Anna's neck that was already showing some signs of bruising, and his eyes clearly showed just how hurt he was by the sight. "Anna. What do you want me to do?" He wanted so desperately to kill this man, but he knew full well that Anna was a regular human girl. Seeing a brutal death in her own home would no doubt scar her for life, and he did not want to do something like that to her. Anna's heart only hurt more when she saw how gently Malachi was looking at her, and she buried her face in his chest as her entire body shuddered. "Can we just call the cops, please?" "Yeah, just stay here," he said gently. He pulled out his phone with one hand and held the trembling Anna in another. It took less than 10 minutes for the cops to show up, and when they did it was honestly quite a show. They went from being starstruck from seeing one of the most famous men in the world with a young woman in his arms, to being downright terrified of the creature that was still holding Anna's abuser captive. Malachi's contracted beast appeared to be rather mild-mannered when she hadn't been given an order, as it didn't really budge from its spot no matter who showed up. The creature politely handed the officers the captive that was within her grasp and returned back to Mal's side. After giving a statement to the officers, they hurriedly took Nick away, who had long passed out and wet himself from the fear of certain death. Quite a few procedures had actually been skipped, possibly due to Mal's identity, or maybe it was due to the horrifying floating creature that remained at his side. It was really anyone's guess. Now, Malachi and Anna were sitting on her couch, staring at the very large monster that had curled up on the floor. "I guess our date is kind of ruined, huh?" Anna said hoarsely. Her throat was still sore from being strangled, but as far as she was concerned that was nothing compared to how she felt inside. She was angry, hurt, depressed, and embarrassed. "No, it wasn't. We just had a slight hiccup is all," he said comfortingly. Anna wasn't sure if she wanted to laugh or cry. "You shouldn't be with someone like me, I am a total mess. Despite loving you, I don't have anything to offer, and I feel like I'm just being some kind of burden and dash. Did you just admit that you love me?" Anna's bad habit of rambling when she became frustrated appeared to have shown itself once again, and she became even more embarrassed than before. Malachi decided not to tease her since she'd already been through a lot today, and he held out his hand to call the resting monster towards them. I don't need you to give me anything, just be yourself and that will be more than enough. Besides, whether or not you should be with me, shouldn't you leave that up to my discretion? Just like Mal, his contracted beast appeared to be really gentle. Its body was formerly around 7 feet tall, but it gradually began to shrink until it was around 3 feet, and all of its sharp appendages and spines retracted into its body. She gently rubbed her head against Malachi's palm, allowing him to feel her cool and smooth skin. And besides, I think you're far from a mess. I wouldn't be able to walk away from you even if you begged me to. Seriously. You're such an idiot. I've been called worse, love. Anna giggled softly and placed a long lingering kiss on Mal's cheek. You can't change your mind later, alright? I told myself I wasn't doing relationships anymore, so if we do this, then you're stuck with me forever. Fine by me. Anna also held her hand out, and hesitantly tried to pet the strange creature in her living room. Unsurprisingly, the creature looked more cautious when Anna tried to touch her, but ultimately she did not pull away. Thank you for saving me, What are you going to name it? Malachi stared at the monstrous creature that now appeared to be much more harmless. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get that image of the first time it appeared out of his mind. How about Sheer, n/o/vel/b/n.c//om? Sheer. Anna recalled the giant scythe-like appendages that were above the creature's arms and immediately understood where the name came from. Totally fits. Right? Back at Mal's apartment, he and Bianca were standing at the front door, being seen off by Luna, Aubrey, Say, Serana, and even Anna. There wasn't really an expected timeframe for Mal's training, but it was expected that he would be gone for at least 7 days. Luna, leaving right after we've begun seeing each other. I hope that you intend to make up for this when you return. Anna, you better text me when you can, and I also want to be apologized to when you come back. Say, I'll be waiting for you, honey. Suddenly, Luna and Anna gave Say a look of intense jealousy, as if they just remembered that she was the only one of them to have slept with Malachi, and even shared a bed with him every night. Aubrey, hey bro, can I drive your car while you're gone? It's not like you'll need it. Serana, remember Mal, if you run into Ryo Amaki, show him my sexy selfies on Finstagram. The ones that make my tits look big. As usual, Mal only felt genuine concern from his girlfriends and rolled his eyes at the 2 young girls that seemed to be unbothered with his departure. He embraced all 3 of his beautiful girlfriends while simultaneously making promises to make up for this when he returned. Only Say seemed to know what that meant though, and she felt a small shiver run down her spine. As Bianca watched Mal go from kissing one great beauty after the other, she could not ignore the longing feeling she felt in her heart. Luckily, Aubrey was there to give her a small nudge and act as her wingwoman. Don't worry, that'll be you soon enough. She whispered. Thanks Aubrey. I hope so. The 2 of them hugged each other warmly before Malachi picked up his bags and began heading towards the door. Be back soon, girls. Try not to miss me too much, yeah? Okay, so when I was in like high school or middle school, I can't remember which one, I'm only 21, but I already have memory issues, give me a break. There was this video game that I loved to pieces, called Evolve. In Evolve, you can play as monsters or hunters, and I always played monster, but more specifically, I played as the 3rd monster, Wraith. That video game is the inspiration for Mal's contracted beast. Malachi and Bianca were currently seated in the back of a very nice limousine. Mal had been lost in thought for quite a while now, as he still felt slightly guilty about leaving his girls behind. It wasn't her fault, but everything that had happened with Anna earlier had really put him on edge. After Say and Serana lost their home to a crazy ex, he became particularly protective over his women. He wanted to believe that the sight of Sheer would have terrified anyone into staying away and not trying anything stupid, but he would always be a bit paranoid. I want so badly for all of them to stay with me forever, but I guess it's too soon for us to be living together, huh? Are you having second thoughts, Malachi? Sitting opposite the 2 members of Immortal Moon was the Guildmaster of Ragnarok himself, Morgan Creed. He hadn't taken his eyes off Mal for quite a while now, and he was a bit worried that he might want to give up before they'd even started. Nah, of course not. I was just missing my girls a bit, as all Morgan smiled fondly as if he was recalling his own wives. Hold on to their memory, my boy. There is little that gives a man strength like the genuine love of good women. They will carry you far. Malachi smiled as he knew that Morgan's words were coming from a place of experience. Morgan seemed to genuinely care about his women just like Malachi did, and was not greedily looking for more. Such a thing made it easy for Mel's idolization of him to grow even further. "You seem to care a lot about your wives, Mr. Creed," Bianca said with a smile. "How can I not? Those girls have forgiven me for more than what should have never been tolerated. Until my dying breath, I will give them everything I have." Traditionally, those blessed with pyrokinetic abilities often have more volatile emotional states, and Morgan was not an exception to this statistic. In fact, as the one blessed by the Norse primordial of fire, his temper was even worse. Though he never laid a hand on his women, he would undoubtedly scream his head off in the middle of the smallest argument, or nearly burn them with the heat coming off his body. It took a long time and several therapy sessions for Morgan to learn how to control himself properly, and even longer for him to learn how to forgive himself for the harm he'd caused them. His greatest fear and shame was that the women in his life loved him so much that they would not have left his side unless he killed them. Even though he was grateful that they stayed with him, he did not feel that he was worthy of such devotion. And even if it cost him everything, he would always prioritize them above all else, just as they had always done for him. Finally, the limousine rolled to a stop after an hour of non-stop riding, and the 3 passengers stepped out of the vehicle. Malachi and Bianca were completely taken aback when instead of arriving at some sort of facility, they arrived at an executive airport. Nearby, there was a private plane that looked luxurious even from the outside. "Come along, kids. You act like you've never been on a plane before," Morgan said merrily. Bianca and Malachi both wanted to say that they were dirt poor until a few months ago, and they hadn't even seen a plane in real life, much less been on one. Malachi's telekinesis was strong enough to the point where he could already fly on his own, so he wasn't particularly afraid. But Bianca on the other hand looked like she was going to fall over dead at any second. "Why didn't anyone tell me we were going to have to get on a plane? I hate this so much." Malachi suddenly grabbed Bianca by the hand and began pulling her towards the plane with a smile on his face. "Come on, B. I know it's probably even crazier on the inside." Bianca could not take her eyes off her hand that was interlocked with Mel's, and she felt her heartbeat start to spiral out of control. "I love planes. I've always loved planes. I want to be a plane when I grow up." Just as Malachi expected, the inside of Morgan's personal plane was more luxurious than most houses. Tanned carpet that was softer than most clouds, leather seats that reclined fully backwards, and a sectional sofa that had 2 beautiful women sitting on it. "You two made it. It's nice to see you again, Malachi." Mel barely had a moment to greet Morgan's wives, Crystal and Amelia, before the man himself found his place between them with his arms wrapped around their waists. "My loves become more beautiful the longer we are apart. How is it that I have become so lucky?" The 2 women blushed, and Malachi and Bianca got the hint that they were interrupting a tender reunion. They quietly made themselves scarce as they headed to the back of the plane, somehow oblivious to the fact that they were still holding hands. Bianca was admittedly a bit nervous to say the least, but with Malachi next to her chatting away happily, she felt significantly less afraid. Neither of them could really say how long the flight was, as they spent so long talking about their passion for anime and music that they barely noticed. Even when the feeling of a bumpy landing vibrated through their butts, they still didn't seem to notice. "How can you say that you don't like My Hero? If it's about the MC, then he gets a lot better after dash. I don't like the show for the same reason why I don't like Young Boy anymore. The fan base makes it fucking unbearable. That's..." Bianca wanted to muster some kind of a defense, but she was having a hard time countering Mel's argument. Whatever. I can't respect someone who thinks Saitama is the strongest anime character ever. Bro obliterated a moon. Nobody is touching him with that. Sure baby boy, but can he beat Goku? Hell, here we fucking go. Malachi threw his hands up in the air as Bianca threw out the one argument that somehow always started a fight in the anime community. "Amelia, how long are they going to do this?" "Crystal, I don't know what they're talking about, but it's cute. Maybe I do want kids after all." "Morgan, are they arguing or flirting?" "I'm not sure anymore." Bianca and Mel became slightly embarrassed when they realized that they were being watched by the same people they were traveling with. We were just having some very important philosophical discussions, n/o/vel/b//in.c//om. Bianca silently nodded her head in agreement, hearing the laughter of the three adults opposite them. Come along, kids. There'll be time for those little discussions of yours later, Morgan said as he exited the plane with his wife's hand in his. Malachi and Bianca grabbed their bags and exited the plane, only to discover that they were standing on a private landing strip a short distance away from an enormous modern beach house. Their surroundings were somewhere tropical, but it was difficult to pinpoint where they'd ended up from that alone. Welcome to our private island, kiddos. When you're practicing with the level of powers that we have, something like this is often a necessity, Morgan explained. Private island. I knew he was rich, but what the hell? Suddenly, a car started heading towards the group and pulled to a stop in front of Morgan and his wives. The door was opened, and a squad of maids stepped out to load the group's luggage into the car while Morgan took off his jacket and rolled up his sleeves. From what I've been told, we're on a tight schedule, so the girls will have to give you a tour of the place later. For now, let's start your training. Dark shadows engulfed Malachi's entire body, and soon he was standing in his all-black combat gear, minus the mask. Bianca, she just unzipped her jacket and took off her sweatpants, with her gear already waiting underneath. Show off. Indeed. Morgan agreed with a smile. But there's nothing wrong with that, I'd probably do the same if I had his powers. Malachi only showed a cheeky smile that properly conveyed just how proud he was of this little trick of his. He was just glad that it actually worked this time, instead of being like the times he tried it in his bathroom at home and only succeeded in becoming completely naked. Say considered this to be her favorite out of all of his abilities. As Morgan rolled up his sleeves, his body began to lift itself off the ground. Mel, I'm assuming you can already do something like this, yes? Then follow me with Miss Bianca. Morgan flew towards the center of the island, leaving the two young kids behind. Okay, so how do we dash? Upsy daisy. Yua. Why are you carrying me like this? Instead of holding Bianca romantically like a princess, Mel chucked her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes and took off into the sky. Is this about the Goku thing? This isn't funny. Of course not, B. I'm over that already. No, he wasn't. You're lying. Malachi Saint, I'm going to kill you. As Mal's laughter echoed throughout the island, Morgan began to feel a bit guilty about what was about to happen during this training camp. Laugh now, my boy. I think this will be the last time you'll be able to for the duration of your stay. We hit 1 million views last night. I honestly never thought I would pick up this novel again after I dropped it the first time, as I was really disappointed with a lot of the reactions that I got the first time around, but I'm honestly really glad I did. I've gotten a lot more support, and so much more motivation this time around, so I'm not depressed when I write this story anymore. Morgan led Malachi and Bianca to the innermost part of his island. Once there, the trio found a massive clearing that spanned the length of a few miles, making Bianca and Malachi wonder just how large this place was. And just how much Morgan had paid for it. Once the two trainees were safely on the ground, Morgan finally began explaining the reason for choosing such a remote location. Sorry about bringing the two of you so far out, but I didn't want to worry the girls with the sound of your screaming. NOV/B/JNN. For some reason, Bianca and Malachi could not bring themselves to accept his words as a mere jest. All right, young lady, I'll start with you. Morgan suddenly held up a single finger that burned with a bright red flame. Just by looking at it, Bianca could tell that the quality and strength of this flame was leagues above her own. She could practice every day for hours for the rest of her life and she still would not be able to measure up. This is the power of a primordial, unreal. I'm going to give you a small bit of my own flame, and you'll need to refine it and make it yours. It will hurt, so are you prepared? Bianca glanced at Malachi one last time before nodding her head in agreement. I am, let's do it. I applaud your bravery, young one. Here it comes. Morgan flicked the small wisp of flame towards Bianca's forehead and traveled inside. As soon as it entered her, an unbearable heat spread throughout her entire body, threatening to burn her alive. It's hot. I don't think I can agake. Bianca. Malachi reached out to take Bianca's hand, but he was stopped by the warning voice of Morgan. Malachi. If you try to help her now, you will only be hurting her. I know that you two care for each other, but you must let her overcome this trial on her own. Regrettably, Mal clutched his fists as he tried not to let the sound of Bianca's screaming shatter his resolve. You can do it, B. But I am going to kick your ass for making me worry afterwards. Malachi finally forced his feet away from Bianca, and came to stand opposite his idol. Do you know the most dangerous part of being blessed by a primordial god, boy? Morgan casually unbuttoned the top few buttons of his shirt, revealing a bit more of his tattooed chest. It is ourselves. Despite the fact that our bodies have been upgraded, sometimes they still cannot handle our abilities, which is a given since we are far from gods. Malachi hadn't realized that, but he quickly pieced together that maybe he just hadn't been pushing his powers hard enough. So how do we fix that? He asked. Morgan smirked as he found it amusing that Malachi was so concerned about Bianca when the first part of his training would undoubtedly be worse. I am going to break your body completely. Liquefy every muscle, crush every bone, rupture every vein. Only by doing this will you not be at such a risk when you push your powers past their limit. Through continuous healing and destruction of Mel's body, he would become stronger, faster, tougher, and most importantly his body would not explode when he used his powers beyond their limits. Mel finally understood why Morgan had offered him so many warnings beforehand. This training was practically torture, and it wouldn't be strange for any number of people to want to back out. But in all actuality, Malachi was actually quite lucky. If he had destroyed his body through use of his powers like Alex and Morgan had, this process would have been dreadfully slower. I'll be avoiding your heart and brain so as not to kill you, but everything else is fair game, even your junk. Luna will no doubt thank me later. Malachi smiled wryly as if he took his idol's words as a joke. Are you trying to make me rel a dash? Boom. Morgan appeared in front of Mal faster than his eyes could follow, and he used both of his hands to chop Malachi on both sides of his neck, crushing muscles, vertebrae, and windpipe alike. Mal's mouth filled with blood as his eyes nearly bulged out of their sockets. Since his throat had been crushed, he couldn't even let out a noise to scream, and instead all that followed was a choking gurgle. Try to breathe, my friend. If you don't, you'll die and Luna will have my head. With blinding speed that was unlike anything Mal had ever seen, Morgan continued his assault on Mal's body, striking and destroying all of his upper body except his heart and his brain. The man blessed by Surtur was terribly efficient in his combat, and he was fast enough that Malachi didn't even have time to fall to his knees. When gravity finally started pulling him down to the earth, Morgan kneed him hard in the jaw and sent him back up into the air. MLAG. Bianca was concerned about Malachi just as he was about her, and the sight of him being brutalized before her very eyes was almost too much to bear. But the moment she lost focus, the heat within her body worsened and she felt like she was going to burn to cinders. No. I have to focus. He's doing his best to grow so I can't stay the same either. Closing her eyes, she fell to her knees and tried her best to concentrate and act as if she was oblivious to the terrible pain. Her body was dripping with sweat as she tried to take the powerful flames that were foretold to end the world and use them to enhance the power of her own. It was radical and dangerous, but Bianca knew that it was far from impossible. She just had to want it bad enough. With Malachi's body soaring into the air, Morgan reached out and grabbed him by the ankle, before whirling his body around and slamming him hard into the ground. A myriad of cracking sounds were heard as Malachi's spine was shattered on impact, while his leg was broken from Morgan's otherworldly grip. I truly hope that you forgive me for this, Malachi. I know this is far from pleasant, but it is still far better than the alternative. HM? All of a sudden, Morgan's sense of danger went haywire. Ever since he'd had these powers, he had never felt this terrified of anything. All he could feel was an overwhelming amount of maliciousness emanating from Malachi's broken body. Suddenly, the mark on Mal's forehead changed from white to a purely black color, and a horrifying creature leapt out of it. Scree. What? Sheer used her bladed appendages to swipe at Morgan blindly and without end, and even someone who was as frighteningly fast as he was had to admit that this creature was extremely quick. This is his contracted beast? I hadn't heard any reports of it hatching. And what the hell is this thing anyway? Sheer was already scary enough in daylight, but the scene of her coming after Morgan on a moonlit night like this one was terrifying enough to make him want to piss himself. Given that he was sure that this was Malachi's creature, Morgan figured it was best if he did not hurt it too much. But still, the creature did not seem to have any qualms about hurting him. Sheer, Semir. Just as Morgan's tattoos began to glow with a fiery red color, the beast suddenly ceased all movement and looked towards the area where Mel's body lay. Morgan nearly shit his pants as he watched the creature warp away from him and appear directly by its master's side. While Mal could teleport, he could only do so through the use of darkness as something like a doorway. But whatever Mal's contracted beast was, it did not seem to have any such restriction. Morgan wasn't sure if its range was short distance or not, but it didn't really matter. The fact that the creature could appear anywhere within a millisecond had terrible implications for a full-scale battle. Seriously, just what else can that thing do? What the hell? Morgan looked down at his chest and saw that he'd suffered a very shallow cut across his torso. It was bleeding lightly and it was nowhere near fatal, but still. His body wasn't healing the damage like it should have been. When Sheer appeared beside her master, she let out some kind of monstrous whimper at the sight of his body's horrible condition. She was still just a baby, so she couldn't speak yet, but she understood that this man's life was tied to hers and it distressed her to see him in such condition. Since talking was impossible for Mal at the moment, he relied on his mind to communicate with the monstrous creature. "I can feel how upset you are, you know? But there's no need for that. That man is helping me get better so that we can go against our real enemy." My. Ah, your first word. Wish I had my phone to record. Mal joked. Anyway, yeah, an enemy. It is someone like that man from earlier who was trying to hurt my girlfriend Anna. Remember? You let her pet you? Sheer didn't have many memories, so it was easy to recall the event Mal spoke of. Morgan is helping me so that I have the strength to make sure nothing like that ever happens again, or at least that he can't get away with it. You have to let him do this, alright? The creature fell silent for a moment as if it was weighing the risks and rewards of obeying such an order. Eventually, Sheer floated off to the side and curled up on the ground, signaling that she would allow this to happen, but she wasn't leaving any time soon. Morgan's head was on a continuous swivel between the broken man lying on the ground and its strange monster sitting a few feet away. He finally noticed movement from Malachi's fingers that were curled up into a beckoning gesture, asking him to continue. By the gods, what a crazy kid. I like writing these stories and all, but bro, I miss being able to read. I used to be able to spend all day reading novels, and now it seems like I never have the time or energy anymore. It's somewhat heartbreaking. Alright, time to hand in your projects, kiddos. There were a few groans and curses under breaths as students reached inside of their bags to pull out their hastily typed papers. Just by skimming over the first few lines of these assignments, Dr. Andrews could easily tell who tried and who didn't. This assignment wasn't even all that difficult. All of you brats are just so damn lazy. 2 students finally came up to hand in their assignments, and he realized that there was an extra one within their grasp. Ms. Gray, am I correct in assuming that this is your partner's assignment? Sure is. Dr. Andrews sighed as he rubbed the bridge of his nose underneath his glasses. That's no good, Mr. Saint will have to come and submit his assignment on his own. Give me a break. Sir Anna suddenly yelled. Mal is really busy doing something important right now, so he doesn't exactly have time to spare. Isn't it enough that he did the stupid assignment? No, Ms. Ehara, it is not. He said in a monotone voice as he accepted her paper and Anna's without taking Malachi's. If he's going to attend college, then he should make that his priority. I'm sure whatever lavish vacation he's gone on or supermodel's bed he's found himself into can at least wait until he hands in a simple paper. Anna hadn't been Mal's girlfriend for very long, but she was already especially sensitive over matters concerning him and the way that he was perceived by others. The whole world thought he was just some reclusive snooty kid who thought he was too good for interviews or photo shoots or even celebrity parties. He was starting to become painted as a deviant who was merely interested in lusting after women twice his age. Although that has caused his popularity with that demographic to soar, while also causing it to plummet with men his age or older. Anna tried her hardest to remember the fact that she wasn't at work and being harassed, so she couldn't crack this guy's skull open like she normally would. Look, he's really doing something important, alright? He isn't just playing around like some spoiled rich boy. Dr. Andrews seemed to realize that if he didn't give this up now, these girls were never going to leave his classroom. Fine, I'll take it, but I'll be docking 10 points off the top. You can't do that. What the hell for? It's either that or he fails. Which do you think he would prefer? Anna clenched her fists so hard that her knuckles popped as she handed over her boyfriend's essay. Sir Anna didn't want to take the chance of saying something to aggravate the situation further, so she quickly interlocked her arm with Anna's and pulled her out of the room. Damn kids, he probably didn't even bother to, huh? The professor glanced over Mal's paper and found that it was actually fairly well written. What's more, is that his observations of Anna seemed to come from a place of genuine concern and intrigue. Glancing over at Anna's paper, he found that hers was much the same, in addition to shedding a light on the man dubbed by the world as the third living god. She went on to explain in perfect detail that Mal didn't even seem like the kind of person who received such tremendous power. Whether it was his anxiety over returning to poverty or inability to recognize his own good looks, she laid out all of it clearly. Reading about all of his worries, fears, and tendencies like this had a way of making Mal seem more human. Wasn't expecting such good work out of such an odd pairing, seems like they got along a lot better than I thought. In the end, maybe due to the quality of the work or his own old age, Professor Andrews ended up punching 2 100s into the computer. Serana and Annalise were walking arm in arm towards the school parking lot, but instead of being a way that girls show their affection, they were doing this to make sure that neither one of them stormed back into the classroom and killed their professor. Seriously, what a dick. All I ask is to meet him in a dark alley just one time, I don't need anything else in life. Seeing the violent tendencies of the two girls would be alarming to some and arousing to others, a perfect testament to the duality of man. Hey, does the parking lot look a little crowded to you? Serana suddenly asked. Anna suddenly came out of her murder fantasy and gazed into the parking lot, and she could see that quite a few people seemed to be gathered around something. Even though she knew it wasn't possible, she silently hoped that Mal had come back from his impromptu training camp and come to surprise her. That dreamlike fantasy spurred her into moving her feet just a little bit faster than normal, and after a while she was practically dragging her pink-haired friend through the parking lot. Did you see that thing? I never thought I'd see one in real life. The tint is so dark I can't even see who's inside. Contrary to what Anna was hoping for, the reason for so much attention being gathered in the parking lot wasn't a handsome young man with dark skin and long dreadlocks. It was a very expensive and rare vehicle, or more specifically, an all-black Lamborghini truck with pink stripes. I love it. I love it so much. Serana muttered with stars in her eyes. Anna's mood only became worse for wear and she rolled her eyes as she started walking towards her car. Come on, let's go to a restaurant or something. But it's so pretty. Serana whined. Suddenly, her phone started vibrating in her pocket and she came to a stop in front of Anna's car. Wait, my mom is calling. Answering the phone, she heard the usual cheerful voice of Say coming from the other line. Where are you girls going? We came to pick you up. Serana suddenly froze and made an embarrassed expression as she looked around for her mom's car. Where are you? And did you have to pick me up like I'm some kind of middle schooler? Turn around. Serana did as her mother asked and saw that the formerly motionless luxury truck was following the two girls. The driver's side window rolled down and revealed 2 gorgeous older Japanese women inside. Luna and Sei looked like they belonged on the cover of a magazine, as both women wore dark sunglasses with tank tops that barely held in their large chests and black and blue jeans, respectively. Sitting on the armrest in between them was a small white fox, who also had on dark sunglasses. Arf. Get in bitches. We're going to do hot girl shit. Both girls were completely taken aback by the sight of the last 2 women who they expected to see on their campus. What are you girls doing? Hurry up and get in before I have to kill one of your classmates for scratching my car. Luna unlocked the doors and gestured for the 2 girls to get into the back seat, leaving Anna still stunned. This is really crazy, huh? She muttered. She realized after a few seconds that she had received no response, and found that Serana had left her a long time ago, and was already in the car. Somehow, a pair of sunglasses had appeared on her face as well. What's taking you so long? Let's go. Anna's mouth hung open in disbelief before she finally climbed inside of the car. Once she fastened herself inside, Luna pulled out of the parking lot like a Formula One racer, earning excited yelps from Shiro and a small cry of surprise from Serana. Why did you guys come to pick us up? Anna suddenly asked. Well, we thought since we're dating the same man we should get a chance to know you better. Sei explained warmly. Hope we aren't inconveniencing you. Luna added. No, of course not, but, do you think you guys could have chosen a more discreet car to get us? Luna cutely twisted her head to the side as if she didn't understand. Didn't we? I thought this one was already pretty low-key. This car costs over 200 grand. Is it? I forgot it was so cheap. Luna said without an ounce of vanity. I don't really drive it anymore, I had really only chosen it because it's my only black vehicle. You don't. So can I have it? Surana asked. This mine and Mal's dream car. I don't mind. Luna said with a shrug. It's already paid off, so just ask your mother if dash. No, she cannot. Say said without batting an eye. But why? Dear, you could sell your body for 18 hours a day and you still wouldn't be able to afford the insurance on this car, much less an oil change or maintenance. Luna wanted to say that she really didn't care about paying for insurance, and she already had a full personal service team who were responsible for working on all 50 of her cars. Eventually, she decided to just slip the keys into Serena's pocket later. Surana suddenly looked offended and groped her breasts to make sure they were still above average in size. Humph. I think you are underestimating my value. If I ever decided to stoop that low, I could buy 20 of these every day for the rest of my life. The girls burst into several adorable fits of laughter, allowing Anna to finally relax a bit. She had to admit she was a bit flustered to begin with, as she thought this might turn into some kind of awkward hazing thing, but it didn't appear to be anything close to that. Anna wasn't very good at making friends, so she was initially certain that there was no way she was going to be able to do it with her boyfriend's other girlfriends. Especially not when she had always been the jealous type in relationships. But for some reason, she could not bring herself to despise these women or wish for them to fall off the face of the earth. They just seemed to be genuinely likable people without a malicious bone in their body. And subconsciously, she began to hope that they liked her and thought she was good enough. Dating that guy has made me all soft and sensitive, since when do I care about things like that? Despite her inner monologue, the undeniable smile on her face confirmed that she was not entirely averse to these changes taking place within her. I think out of everything I have ever written so far, the most unrealistic part of my story is the fact that a professor can remember a student's name. Luna ended up driving the girls an hour away, to her home that was isolated in the countryside. Well, home isn't quite the proper term. This place is like a fucking palace. Surana said. Dear, watch your language. But yes, it is like a fucking palace. Say agreed. I have never felt more poor in my entire life. Anna added. Somehow, Luna had started to feel embarrassed by the reactions her traveling companions had when seeing her home. She couldn't help it if she liked nice things, okay? The gates at the front automatically opened when Luna's car came close enough, allowing the girls a closer look at Luna's enormous multi-million-dollar mansion. She had barely pulled into her garage and turned her car off, when Surana practically threw herself out of the vehicle. This is amazing. The echo traveling in such a large space only added to her declaration. As Annalise finally looked around, she could not help but to agree. No wonder she didn't give a damn about this truck, it's the cheapest car in here. At first glance, all of the cars in Luna's garage were priced anywhere from $300,000 to $2 million. Making it more than conceivable that she had forgotten about the price of her little Lamborghini truck. If this is just the garage, how crazy is the rest of this place going to be? The answer to Anna's question was just as insane as she expected. Luna's home was unbelievably lavish and elegant, whether it was the million-dollar sculptures or the one-of-one paintings, she seemed to have it all. Not to mention her squad of experienced maids and butlers who tried to cater to their every need. Surana made a simple comment about how it was hot outside, and 3 of them peeled off to go and prepare the pool so that they could take a dip. When Say and Anna tried to say that they did not have swimsuits, Luna waved away their excuse and explained that she had plenty that they could choose from. So now, Luna and Say were seated on a beach chair poolside, wearing bathing suits that could make a pope abandon his faith. This is more embarrassing than I thought it would be. I'm not exactly the same body type as you. Luna tilted her sunglasses downward and glanced at Say, who was sitting beside her. She was wearing a bold white bikini that surprisingly held in her large chest without much issue. What's the problem? Our breasts are practically the same size. Luna said with a shrug. Yes, well. Say suddenly looked around to make sure that the 2 of them were alone and stood up from her seat. Turning around, she allowed Luna to see her bikini bottoms that more closely resembled a thong than actual swimwear. Say's hips and butt were quite a bit larger than Luna's, and as a result there just wasn't enough coverage for all of the surface area. Wow. I can see why he confessed to you first. I'm actually rather jealous. Shut up. I feel so exposed that I could just die. How dramatic. Smack. Ow. Say rubbed the Luna-sized handprint on her left but cheek as she glared at the culprit. There are only girls here, so it's not like you have to worry about anyone looking at you strangely. Just relax. Say sighed and resigned herself to this uncomfortable yet sexy fate, while simultaneously wondering what Mal would say if he were here. Well, I doubt very much that he would use his mouth for talking. We're done changing. Whoa, it's like an Olympic pool. Anna and Sarana finally finished picking out swimsuits, and their choices were much the same, but with different levels of charm. Sarana had on a simple black one-piece bathing suit that was tied twice due to the fact that her own chest size was inferior to her mother's and Luna's. A fact that she would have been more pissed about had she not seen the price tag on the outfit she was wearing. After seeing so many zeros, she couldn't care less about chest size. Anna on the other hand wore an enchanting dark red two-piece that contained a white band around the top and bottom that had the name of a famous brand. Eventually, she noticed that Say and Luna were giving her a funny look, and she wondered if it was because her swimsuit was too tight. What? Why are you looking at me like that? She asked shyly. We're sorry. Say apologized. You're just very. Luna's question was a fair one, and anyone who saw Annalise would wonder the same. Whether it was her curvy body, her enchanting face, or her tattoos and piercings, she was a girl in possession of an extremely captivating and unique beauty. Yeah, no. I'm not lifting things with my mind or crushing cars with my hands. She dismissed. Good thing for the dudes who come into the store, no? Sarana added cheekily. She did not wait for her friend's backhanded reply and instead ran towards the massive pool and dove inside. Annalise rolled her eyes and joined her not long after, and as soon as her seductive body hit the water she felt as if she were being reborn. Not only was the water cold and clear as day, but she could smell little to no chlorine odor stemming from it. This is nice. He should be here. She muttered to herself. Luna finally stood up from her seat and started heading for the pool with the girls. Why you're leaving me? Say asked sadly. Luna merely shrugged and continued walking. Yes, I wanted to test something. Old man Rowan told me a story about Chang'e where she rejuvenates the bodies of others by giving them some of her bath water. I wondered if I could do something similar. Oh, all right. Wait, what? Morgan broke Malachi's body for hours upon hours. It was undoubtedly a hell unlike anything the young man had ever known, and he had passed out from the overwhelming pain on more than one occasion. Sheer let out frustrated and monstrous growls as she watched the scene, but other than that she did not interfere. But Morgan would still continuously check her positioning as if he was worried about that changing at any second. Bianca was still in a trance, desperately trying to refine the powerful flame that had gifted to her, although she was undoubtedly making progress. Morgan looked up at the sun that was shining high overhead and wiped his brow of lingering sweat. Well now, went a lot longer than I wanted to. But I think that this should just about do it. Glancing down, he inspected the sleeping young man and nodded in satisfaction. Malachi's body condition had drastically improved, and now it was nearly on par with his own. 1425. The amount of force he had to use in order to break his body every time it healed would shoot up in drastic increments, and by now he could no longer wound him seriously without using his blessing. A few appendages were still slowly healing, but they would undoubtedly be finished within the next 10 minutes or so. I can't wait to see what your new stats look like, lad. You were already plenty fast and strong before, but I wonder just how big the difference will be now. Kaya. What is that thing? Is there a gate break? Oh? Seems like you're done, Bianca. How was the experience? Fuck the experience. Why is there a damn baby kaiju on this island? As soon as the young girl had fully assimilated Morgan's power, she opened her eyes to find Malachi asleep on the ground several feet away, with Sheer curled up nearby. It was a very piss-poor way to wake up. Bianca's hands took on a smoldering fiery red color, and Morgan knew that she was about to make a very stupid mistake. Easy now, lass. That's your friend's contracted beast. That's his, what? Sensing they were done, Sheer finally moved from her place underneath the shade and floated towards Malachi. She carefully picked up his body and placed him on her back, displaying her intent to carry him. See, lass? She's friendly, mostly. Morgan looked down at the small wound that he suffered during their first meeting. He was cut over 8 hours ago, but the wound had only showed signs of clotting about 30 minutes ago. He didn't even want to imagine what would happen if he had allowed Bianca to strike her blindly. You kids have worked hard, so we'll head to the house and try to get some food in you. You can rest for around 4 hours or so, and then we'll come right back out here. NOV.L.B/JNN. Oh, only 4 hours? Bianca asked pitifully. After an exhausting ordeal like this one, she didn't want to settle for anything less than 12. Ha 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 ha. I know, it's not ideal. But since you've done such good work, I can reward you by giving you a room right next to his. Bianca glanced down at the handsome resting face of Malachi and made a decision within nanoseconds. I'll take it. Malachi was gently stirred awake by the feeling of 2 pointy objects being pressed into his cheeks and hushed whispers coming from above his head. This is crazy. I feel like I'm poking stone. Hiss. So you agree? Almost makes getting your body destroyed seem worth it. Almost. When Malachi's eyes fluttered open, he was staring up at his friend Bianca and contracted beast Sheer, who both seemed to be rather interested in analyzing him. Can I help you girls with something? No. Hiss. Alright, good talk. Malachi suddenly sat up and realized that he was inside of a very nice living room. Behind him, there was an open kitchen with a small team of maids who were cowering in fear as they cooked. It didn't take long for him to put 2 and 2 together, and he realized that they must have been afraid of the large monster hovering above the couch. Yeah, they've been like that for a while now. Your beast seems to be super loyal and passive, but I guess it's hard for them to get over how scary she looks. Bianca admitted. She had actually grown to like Sheer just a bit. She may have looked super scary on the outside, but once you observed her a while, it was easy to see that wasn't the case. I guess I get that. I'm surprised she hasn't gone back inside by now. Mal muttered. He tried to mentally call Sheer back into his body, and she first looked him up and down like she was trying to assure he was okay before retreating. Once she was satisfied, her body became a mass of violet light, and she re-entered the mark on Malachi's forehead. The maids within the kitchen let out an auditory sigh of relief, while Bianca seemed to be slightly disappointed. Shadows engulfed Malachi's body, and his combat suit was replaced with simple dark sweatpants and a t-shirt. Come on, we should eat now. Bianca said as she took his hand. Mr. Morgan's only given us 4 hours to rest. Malachi would have been more bothered by that information had he not just woken up from a nap. He and Bianca sat down at the table and allowed themselves to be serviced by Morgan's team of dedicated maids. Their plates were piled high with all kinds of calorie-rich foods, a menu that Morgan specifically requested as a means to keep their energy up. This is a lot, right? Bianca muttered in a somewhat scared tone. But unfortunately, Malachi could not hear her as he had decided to check his phone for messages. He had a few cute ones from Say, some aloof yet sexy ones from Luna, and some threats of bodily harm from Anna. But the thing that garnered most of his attention was the pictures that Sorana had posted on Finstagram. It was a photo of her and 3 beautiful women in a pool sipping margaritas. Evidently, her followers were just as shocked as he was, and Sorana's simple caption didn't exactly help. Mama Sorana, no caption needed. Smiley face, #poolday. YB is daddy, not bitch, you gotta explain this. Exotic playa, bro is that Luna Autumn. Drop the low. Rodwave wife, okay girl I see you. You should go live. Charlie the Prowler, damn yo mama look good. I'm trying to play stepdaddy. 350 yas at the girl with black hair? Eventually, Mal decided to close the app before he went on a killing spree of random people on the internet. He then went to his messages and sent the girls a group message telling them how beautiful they looked and how much he missed them. When he finally put his phone down, he realized that Bianca was staring at him with her cheeks puffed out, a clear look of irritation. Sorry. I'm listening, I promise. Whatever. She said as she rolled her eyes. I asked you how your body felt since Morgan pulverized you and all. At that moment, Malachi realized that he hadn't actually noticed anything different, and his body felt the same as it usually did. Normal. Did I get my ass kicked for nothing? NOV.L.B/JNN. Bianca didn't even say a word as she continued to chew on her food nonchalantly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small magic knife with an iridescent hue, and stabbed Mal in the chest without even looking in his direction. The knife shattered against his skin without leaving so much as a scratch, although there was a small hole in his black shirt. I guess I did improve a bit. While he had always been immune to regular weapons, magical ones were a completely new thing for him. Even if Bianca's knife was of a very low grade, it was still a magical item and definitely should have drawn blood. What about you? How's your little training arc coming along? Bianca suddenly had a proud look on her face as she held up a single finger that burned with a dark red flame. I had something of a breakthrough. While it was quite hot, the flames did not seem destructive in nature. I realized I was trying to be as powerful as you and Mr. Creed without really asking if that was how my powers were intended to be used. After all, Hephaestus is a creator and not a warrior. Maybe I wasn't meant to fight directly alongside you, but that doesn't mean I can't assist you. Bianca had learned a lot about forcing herself to do things that just weren't in her nature. The only way for her to be truly comfortable within herself was to find her own potential and maximize it, not try to copy someone else's. This training would end up being much more helpful for her than she ever could have realized. Mal didn't really know what to say. While it felt good to know that Bianca was always thinking about him, there was a part of him that wanted her to do things of her own volition and as her own source of motivation. So, what's her name? Bianca suddenly asked. Your contracted beast. It is a girl, right? Oh yeah, that's Sheer. Sheer. I cold see that. Bianca admitted. Do you know anything about her? I have never seen anything like her before. Needless to say, Malachi didn't know much more than she did about the strange creature he had acquired on accident. His belief that it was a beast of terrible catastrophe was truly no more than a hunch. All that he could do was wait for Nyx to appear before him again, and hope that he could ask her for answers. After eating, Bianca led Mal to their rooms upstairs. Just as Morgan had promised, their rooms were indeed right beside each other, with a door connecting them. Almost being burned alive had never felt so worth it. Malachi wanted to take a shower once he got inside, so he and Bianca parted ways for the time being. Even the bathroom was sparkling and pristine with a golden shower head and soaps from brands that he couldn't even pronounce. After getting out of the shower, Malachi slipped on a pair of briefs before falling onto the cloud-like bed haphazardly. I said I wasn't tired, but this makes it kinda hard not to be, he said sleepily. Not only was the room the perfect cold temperature, but the sheets and comforters were obviously freshly washed and still smelled of the dryer. To not fall victim to such temptations would render him a monster incapable of feeling. Just as his eyelids became heavy, he heard a buzzing sound from the dresser on the other side of the room. Holding out his hand, he called his phone into his palm and saw that he was receiving a video call from Anna. A small smile spread across his lips and he answered in a heartbeat, excited to see the face of one of the women he loved most. But unfortunately, he only got Serana instead. The pink-haired girl was teary-eyed and clearly in distress, though as for why, he was sure that it wasn't anything serious. Mel. Nobody cares about me or thinks I'm hot. All they care about are your stupid girlfriends and their huge boobs. Malachi merely rolled his eyes and turned over to lie on his back. Serana, why do you have Anna's phone dash? Say, is that honey? Anna, Mal called. Give me back my phone. Luna, let me see him. Morgan better not have ruined his face. Kaya. Wait, I'm talking to him. Mal suddenly heard the sound of splashing and the camera angle became a blur as the phone was wrestled from Serena's grip. Unsurprisingly, Luna's superior physical body and telekinetic abilities allowed her to recover the phone first, and she held it in a way that allowed Mal to see all three beautiful women. But Mal admittedly had to do a double take because for some reason his girlfriends did not look quite the same as he had left them. Not sure if I just miss you guys or what, but you look even more beautiful than the last time I saw you. How is this possible? Ignoring the fact that the girls were currently soaking wet and wearing bathing suits, their skin and hair seemed to be literally glowing. Luna has a magical body. Say explained. 1408. And it wasn't hard to tell that the camera was in no way doing them justice. Luna has a magical body. Say explained. It's true, it defies common sense. Anna added. I think I need a better explanation cause the mental image that I have can't be correct. He was met with giggles combined with rolled eyes before Luna explained how Rowan had told her a story about Changi cleansing others' body through the use of her bathwater. Since they were swimming today, she wanted to know if she could do something similar and decided to use the girls as a test subject. My body feels great and all, but my boobs didn't get any bigger, Serana said sadly. Say merely offered her daughter a consultative pat on the head and did not comment. But enough about that, how are you, love? Is training going well? Luna asked. Malachi told the girls about everything he'd done on the island so far, using as little detail as possible so as not to scare them. It seemed to have worked sufficiently, as when he told the girls that he could no longer be injured by low-grade magical weapons, their eyes took on a visible sparkle. Because Mal was so comfortable, he ended up falling asleep on the phone with the girls, but they were not particularly upset. Though they missed him, they could understand that he must have gone through quite a lot and must have been tired. They said their loving goodbyes as he slept, before hanging up and promising to send him more pictures later. As Mal slumbered, the door between his room and Bianca's opened, and she hesitantly poked her head inside. Seeing bad kids in the barbershop will forever be the funnest part of being a man. This little boy told his mama, "Don't tell me what to do loud ASF in front of a room full of grown-ass men," and he had like 6 people trying to whoop him. Morgan knocked lightly on the door to Malachi's room and waited for some kind of response. When he received none, he silently twisted the doorknob and checked inside, and was relatively surprised by what he found. Malachi was asleep on top of the bed, wearing nothing but a pair of black briefs and with a young woman in his arms. Bianca was also sleeping lightly, her glasses strewn across her face haphazardly, and wearing a pair of shorts and an anime crop top hoodie. As someone who had just left the embrace of his own wives a few minutes ago, he could sympathize with this sweet scene, and he very nearly turned around to leave. But he held fast to his promise to Luna to help Malachi grow as strong as possible in a short amount of time. Rise and shine, kiddies, n/o/val/b/.c//n.c//om. Kya? Huh? Both Malachi and Bianca immediately sat up on the bed and looked at each other strangely. Mel might have been tired, but there is no way that he wouldn't remember going to bed with her. B? Why were we? We didn't do anything. I came in a while ago and I saw that you were sleeping and I just wanted to play a little joke. She explained shyly. While Mel was asleep, Bianca laid down next to him on the bed and started taking selfies with the both of them. However, Mal had grown accustomed to sleeping next to someone ever since Say had moved in, so he instinctively grabbed her and pulled her close. Suddenly Bianca's joke was no longer funny and she tried her best to escape without waking him, but Malachi only clung to her tighter. Finally, she resigned herself to her fate and decided to wait for him to wake up, but she was so enticed by his body heat and scent of the sheets that she ended up falling asleep alongside him. So you see, I didn't do anything weird to you and I didn't stare at you in your underwear or anything, I just wanted to take pictures of you with my finger up your nose. While Morgan was trying not to die of laughter, Malachi was still holding on to Bianca without even realizing it. Yeah, I know we didn't do anything, don't worry. Malachi and Say spent a lot of time together. And since he was a 20-year-old man with raging hormones and she was a middle-aged woman with needs that had long been unfulfilled. As a result, the two of them had sex whenever they got the chance, and Mal was a quick learner and rather proficient. If Bianca had done something to him, not only would he have woken up, but she wouldn't have nearly as much energy as she had now. Time for training. Hey, I asked you a question. Just like before, Malachi was back in the clearing with Morgan with a bit of anxiety behind his orange eyes. Bianca had been sent to do her own individual exercises, leaving the two men alone to do God's know what. All right lad, let's begin. Morgan pointed up at the sky where the sun was shining brightly overhead. For most people, they must learn to adapt to times where they do not have an advantage, but you do not have that same restriction. Anywhere at any time can be your home turf. Malachi seemingly understood what he was being asked and his eyes became black and empty. The bright day suddenly changed into a beautiful yet eerie night, and he was already beginning to feel right at home in this atmosphere. But even though he was being filled with energy, maintaining this fabricated night was terribly taxing. Good. Now come at me. Malachi looked at Morgan like he had just asked him to jumpstart a car with a fleshlight. Creating night like this always rendered him practically immobile. So to ask him to fight was almost like a bad joke. I know that I ask something difficult of you, but so what? Are you telling me that the limits of your ambition only go this far? Nah, course not. Mal said with a cheap smile. At the end of the day, this was what he had come for. He always knew that he would have to get over this hurdle one day, so why not now? Reaching behind his back, he unsheathed the twin Ikawa he'd received from Luna and gave them a delicate whirl. "Those look pretty dangerous," Morgan said with an impressed whistle. "But that's not quite what I wanted to see." "Huh?" Almost on cue, Morgan's skin became dark and molten, and he expanded and grew to a height of 25 feet. The temperature easily rose to 100 degrees, and all of Malachi's work to turn this place dark seemed to have been for naught. Morgan was a massive flaming behemoth that wasn't much different from a miniature sun, forcing the young man to take a step back. "Maybe I should have been more specific. We are primordial blessed boy, against us mere weapons are nigh insufficient. Only through power on par with ours can we be felled." For Mal, this training was only becoming more and more unrealistic. Thud. Thud. As Morgan stepped forward, his large feet left flaming footsteps in the ground and caused small tremors. "Does the task feel difficult? Insurmountable? Good, life will be like that. And if you want to clash against Alex Heller, this feeling will only be multiplied 100-fold. Malachi flinched and his eyes widened in shock. "How did you dash?" Bang. Morgan casually kicked Mal with the same energy that one would an empty soda can on the street, sending him flying through the air like a kite with its strings cut. After being brutalized so terribly since last night, he had admittedly become more accustomed to pain, but he still noticed the sensation of his skin burning and the air leaving his lungs. Correcting himself in midair, he landed delicately on his feet but immediately fell onto one knee. It was easy enough to guess, there is only one enemy who would require power like ours. "Don't know why you're rushing, but I figure you're trying to get revenge on that slimy bastard, and that's enough for me." Malachi laughed dryly and pulled himself back to his feet. "Almost forgot why I was doing this for a second. Ain't that a shame?" Dark shadows began rushing towards Mal and encased his body. Instead of darkness making up the entirety of his being, he used it as a kind of armor. Before he knew what he wanted his future to look like, he couldn't become Nyx's avatar and fully attain that level of power. "I hope that you won't take it easy on me, Morgan." As the flaming giant looked down at the man encased in stars, nebulas, and darkness, he felt slightly impressed by the amount of control. "Oh? Why is that? How am I supposed to grow if you do?" Whoosh. Malachi disappeared from his place on the ground, and appeared high in the air right next to Morgan's head. Boom. Malachi threw a kick aimed directly for his jaw, but Morgan held up an overly large hand to stop it. "This strength is real, my arm is trembling." Morgan was actually rather proud. He had never had children before, but somehow he knew that this is what it would feel like to watch his child take his first steps. "I'm afraid I can't comply with your request, lad. For me to truly going all out would eviscerate this whole island. Bit much for simple lessons, no?" Morgan flexed his hand and an entirely black sword with a molten tip appeared out of thin air. "But I can promise to bring you as close to death as I can, as many times as I can. You just promise me that you'll come back alive every time." Even though none of Mal's facial features could be seen, Morgan knew that he was smiling underneath the mass of black stars. "Shall we begin? I miss him." "Same, me too. All of you make me sick." After getting off the phone with Malachi, the girls had the wind taken out of their sails completely. Now they were lounging on chairs poolside, staring blankly up into space and seemingly a million miles away. Serana had never been so annoyed in her life. "We were having fun before he called, why do you guys have to be such downers now?" All three of Mal's girlfriends stared blankly at Serana as if they were going through some tribulations that she couldn't hope to understand. "Geez, I should have hung out with Aisha and Aubrey instead. Even if they're all coupled up and cuddly, at least I don't have to worry about them ruining the mood. Give us a break, we're still in the honeymoon phase." "He's all I can think about," Anna said honestly. Luna nodded silently in agreement, and Serana turned her gaze towards her mother who had yet to say anything. "And what's your excuse, mother dearest? You should be out of the cupcake stage already." Say tilted her sunglasses downwards and gave her daughter a pitying look. "Honey. Sometimes women have needs that dash." "You, gross." Say only shrugged as if she did not see the problem with her statement. Suddenly, she got a call on her phone and after sighing in disappointment when she realized it wasn't Malachi calling, she answered. The first thing she heard was the voice of her energetic head chef from her restaurant, Tito. "Hey boss, how are you? I'm fine. Tito, is something the matter with the shop? It's rather unusual of you to call me. Ah, well. This is kind of awkward. Say immediately sat up, concerned about what her employee might be about to tell her. About 20 minutes ago, we had a lady come in asking for you by name. I don't know if she's lying or not, but she says she's your mother.